Well, ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to call tonight's Conservation Commission meeting to order. My name is Chris Garahan. I'm the chairman of the Conservation Commission. And the first thing, we want to do a couple preliminary matters. We have our open session citizen concerns, but before that, a couple of things. First of all, I wanted to thank publicly Mr. Chris Tamula. Had served on this commission for 8 years. He was very conscientious, very knowledgeable, and he resigned at the end of last meeting. But I want to publicly thank Chris Tamula for his 8 years of service to the commission, and we all are going to miss him. And then following up on that, we were very fortunate to have Mr. Pete Spahn sitting right to my left here, who has volunteered to come on the commission, and so he's here for his first night at Concom. So, and Pete, you've got an excellent background. I can tell folks, with civil engineering background, environmental. So I know you're going to be a great asset to the commission. So welcome aboard, sir.
Thank you very much, and thank you for having me.
You bet. And then one other item under that I have under open session is I did have a report recently that we had some problems out at the out of Middlesex Street. There's the Mr. Harvey's has a property. I don't know if he's in the back of the room, but I wanted to mention there's some drainage issues that are happening with the slope coming down into the St. John's parking lot that's down below. So I wanted to bring that to David Coons, our agent's attention, and maybe we can follow up with Mr. Harvey and kind of see what we can do to address the issue.
St. Mary or St. John?
St. John's, yeah. North Chelmsford, yeah. St. John's and North Chelmsford, Middlesex Street, yeah.
Yeah, it's a new subdivision road named Mary Ave.
Yeah.
Which is off of Tobin.
Okay.
I believe.
So I just want to flag that for some follow-up would be
Is
good.
Mr. Harvey here tonight?
I don't see him. So if he comes in later, we can address it.
I don't see.
All right. So that was a couple items. Does anyone else have anything at this point that's not on this evening's agenda, that's not on the agenda they want to just bring to our attention, and we can address that quickly here before we head into the regulatory items? And we do have a pretty full schedule tonight, but if you've got something, just raise your hand, identify yourself, come on up, name and address, and we can take that. If we don't have anything, that's good, because we can move on to the pretty full agenda that we've got here. So then, working on the agenda, we move now to our regulatory hearings. And the first item that we have is a request for amended order of conditions, and that's a filing by the town of Chelmsford related to Freeman Lake. And we have Emily Volgamore is from Solitude Lake Management. It's representing the applicant. And David, anything you want to say preliminarily before we head in?
I'll just remind the commission that the original filing for the treatment of Freeman Lake was for the entire lake. It was filed as an ecological restoration limited project. The original order of conditions was appealed in working with the appellants on a resolution. As I did more and more research, I came to learn, and I didn't know the full story before the original notice of intent filing, that what was really driving this was the impact of the invasive vegetation on the swimming area, the Varney Beach swimming area, to the point where I gather in 2021 that the beach actually had to be closed for a few days. So it seemed to make much more sense for the town to request an amended order of conditions to limit the scope just to the swimming area, which what was done, and that's what is before the commission tonight. Again, I'll just repeat that the project is now no longer an ecological restoration limited project, but it needs to comply with the performance standards for land underwater, which I'll talk a little bit more, as the hearing goes along. So,
Okay.
But actually, the notice needs to be read.
All right, let's go to our legal notice then.
Pursuant to the provisions of the Massachusetts Wetlands Protection Act, MGL 131, Section 40, and the Chelmsford Wetlands Bylaw, Chapter 187, the Chelmsford Conservation Commission will conduct a public hearing in room 204. The Chelmsford Town Offices, 50 Billerica Road, on Tuesday, January 10th, 2023, at 7 p.m. to consider the request for amendment to Order of Conditions 129-0929 filed by property owner Town of Chelmsford for proposed work within land under water bodies and waterways at Freeman Lake. The requested amendment proposes to limit the extent of management of nuisance aquatic vegetation to the approximately 43,560 square foot Varney Beach swimming area for purposes of improving, maintaining recreation access. The amended project will comply with the performance standards for land under water bodies and waterways. Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Carol. Thank you very much. All right, so we have our legal notice for the record, and now the next step in the hearing would be to hear from the applicant's representative. So if we could
So I
hear.
believe Emily is here.
Okay.
I am here. Can you hear me?
We can.
Yes, we can. Thank
Wow,
you.
very good.
Perfect. I would love to talk about this. Am I okay to?
Proceed.
Yes, please.
Do you need to share the screen, your screen?
Hello, can you hear me? Am I okay to proceed?
Yes.
We can hear you. Can you hear us?
I can hear you. Perfect. Just
Good,
wanted to make sure.
You're good.
Excellent. So when this project first started, the proposed treatment was the entire lake, and we have since met with the Freeman Ad Hoc Committee to discuss revisions to this plan, and we have all come up into agreement on a treatment of specifically Varney Beach area, which is highlighted in the image shown. This is approximately 43 and change thousand square feet acres of area. So it's a very, very small, contained, limited situation where we are proposing to use Flumigard SC. Flumioxazin is the trade name, the active ingredient. And we are looking to target specifically fanwort, but what is beneficial about flumioxazin is that it will target some of our native species that are a nuisance in the beach area. The original proposement was that we were going to treat with a sonar treatment, which would include a booster treatment mid-season. That has since been revisited, and the reason we are switching to an option like Flumigard SC is because that we are able to more effectively treat specifically a beach area, whereas Flumigard is not appropriate for a whole lake treatment rather than a specific beach treatment where it is allowed and permissible to treat each year, year after year. There are virtually no restrictions to using Flumigard SC. We have 5 days of irrigation restrictions, but I am aware that the lake is not used for irrigation, so that those notices are null. Otherwise, there are no drinking water, livestock watering, swimming, or fishing restrictions for Flumigard SC. So really what we're looking to do is to control the growth of non-native and native growth within the beach treatment area. Originally, this was proposed as an entire lake, as mentioned, an entire lake treatment. And unfortunately, with Flumigard SC, we are not able to treat entire lakes year after year. So this is specific to beach. It's a very beach-specific treatment that will target not only our invasive fanwort, which is your major issue in Freeman Lake, will not only target fanwort, but will also target our native species as well that are causing a nuisance problem in Freeman Lake. So it will not necessarily target your entire population. Specifically, it will target nuisance populations. What is important to note about this treatment is that it is very specific and recommended for fanwort. The problem with fanwort is that physiologically speaking, we have a very brittle root system. So any sort of hand pulling suctioning, harvesting, eco-harvesting maneuver will potentially fragment the plant and create a worse problem in the long run. So really what we're looking to do is to target the root problem and remediate the situation immediately before the situation gets worse. We are not looking to exacerbate the problem. We are looking to, again, mediate this problem with the use of Massachusetts and EPA registered herbicides. So these are not something that are novel or new. These are very well-known, proposed, and regularly used herbicides that we use for issues like fanwort. Unfortunately, the situation right now, having limited treatment to the beach area and not the whole lake, is that we do have to look at long-term management. Unfortunately, if we were to do nothing, which is the worst situation possible, is to do nothing.
Lost her.
Distribution and abundance. If we were to target the beach treatment early as proposed, we are looking at a situation where we are actually making progress towards a more balanced ecosystem. One thing that I'm very appreciative of as both a lake manager and a member working with season to season comprehensive survey.
Oh, hello, Emily? Emily, I think we lost you.
Not growing. By the fall, we will have excellent data on the increase in invasive species spread. So I think that is huge and important. But for now, the absolute worst thing that could be done is to do nothing. There is a clear fanwort problem. I have seen it. I have been there. Your lake is in jeopardy and it's in threat of being completely taken over by invasive species. So at least leaving this recreational area is huge to the economic halo effect and general lake vulnerability. This is the absolute best way forward. I know that herbicides often have a bad rap and a bad reputation, but using these safe and effective EPA registered herbicides will directly target your issues with invasive species and nuisance native species. And the comparison really is that this herbicide treatment is modern medicine as compared to other conventional management operations such as harvesting, eco-harvesting, hand pulling, the whole 9 yards. So this is a very limited, contained situation where I think that herbicides would do a great benefit to your ecosystem in terms of ecological restoration. I think that this is the best management way forward, and I have spoken with other lake managers that deal with similar situations. They also agree and recommend the use of flumioxazin, Flumiguard SC. And I am open to questions. I think this is the best way forward, and I also I think that this proposes a long-term management plan for the future that offers flexibility into what we want to manage from season to season.
Well, Emily, thank you very much for your overview and presentation. What we'll do in the hearing then is we'll proceed to have the commissioners ask questions first. We'll go down to, work our way down the commission for questions, and then we'll turn, it is a public hearing, so then we'll turn to the public for public questions and comments as well, too. So Emily, if you can stand by, I'm sure we're going to have some questions. Now, what I'd like to do is start probably from the right side of the commission here and ask Mr. Carl Bischoff if he has some questions at this point.
Are there any known side effects of this with other vegetation or downstream? How long does this chemical stay in the water? Does it go further downstream to other parts of the water system?
Yeah, absolutely. So, two things to note. One is that so in Massachusetts, you're only allowed to apply FlumiGuard SC every 1 in 4 years, unless it is a beach area or a recreational area. The reason this is because there was some thought when the herbicide was first being registered that maybe it would affect the entire native population, which we have seen it's not necessarily true at all. But out of an abundance of caution, we moved forward with these recommendations, and unfortunately, FlumiGuard SC is a very broad spectrum herbicide in that it will target non-species, target species, such as some of your beneficial natives. However, it will not decimate nor eradicate these populations. It might have some control on these populations, but when you're dealing with a beach area and your goal is to control the beach area, this is a perfect option.
And how is it applied? How do you control it inside that space?
Yep, so it's applied subsurfacely. We do our calculations based on dilution so that we are aware of how the water will dissipate in terms of wave action and natural movement. Essentially what happens is we do a very limited application to your beach area only, and the water movement is towards shore, so it's very, very contained. Very short acting, rapid release herbicide. It will target your non-natives and your essentially your beach area immediately, and will not have this residual control that we see oftentimes with troublesome herbicides.
Okay. Thanks.
Thanks. Good. Mark Gibbs, Mr. Gibbs?
Originally, you were gonna treat the whole lake, and now you're doing the recreational area. Your thoughts on the balance of the lake and what's that gonna mean for future?
Yes, I am going to stick to my guns and recommend a whole lake treatment. I was able to survey with the ad hoc committee this summer, and I noticed a widespread infestation of non-native invasive species. Limited to your beach area. Obviously, the ideal situation is to treat your entire lake so that we are not dealing with this situation year after year, but at least keeping your beach clean would help to eliminate the impeding factors of invasive species within your area.
I think so.
Oh, is there any, excuse me, is there any imminent problems you can foresee that's not being addressed now? I guess we had so much information on doing the entire lake. Now we're just doing the recreational areas. I want to make sure that we're being proactive.
Yes, absolutely. It's still proactive to do your beach area. The worst thing you can do in management is do nothing. That is the golden rule of what I do for a living. It's you have to do something about this. So there are really no limiting factors. There's nothing that's going to impede on the efficacy of your treatment. I think that this is really your best way forward.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Next up, Bill Vines. Mr. Bill Vines?
Yeah, Emily, what time of, what time of the year do you need to do this?
I would ideally like to have this happen end of May, early June, just so we can get ahead on growth and that we can avoid beach uses, per se. So I don't want to treat when the beach is being heavily used. I want to make sure we get out there early.
And how long does it last? How long is it effective? once you treat it, is it a day, a week, or weeks?
You should see efficacy throughout the season. There might be season to season hold. It really depends on your water chemistry, which we do not have data on, but you should see a hold throughout the summer.
All right, I'm good
Okay,
right now, Chris.
good. Mr. Dave McLaughlin?
Somebody better make sure that this project meets the funds that were approved by town meeting, which was for $60,000 for the whole lake. I assume this project's gonna be substantially less than $60,000. But the purpose of the money is not for what was approved by town meeting. That's not a conservation question. I'm just saying it because somebody, I think, should address that for town meeting. Ellie, from your perspective, if we were to ever put in a long-term program, is this a certain amount of money every year forever? And how much, from your professional experience, what's the best estimate of that?
So this is certainly not forever. We don't talk about eradication. There really is no sense of eradication where we completely get rid of plants just because they're readily introduced into systems. However, I think that you will achieve good control out of your beach area. I think that it's a very limited area where we are able to achieve your goals. This is not, obviously, if this was whole lake, we would be talking about a completely different scope of work. This is just restricted to your beach area, so we do have a very good boundary and limitation
I'm not talking just about Varney. I'm saying from your professional background, if we were to put in a program to address all of Freeman Lake, have you got a sense of what it might cost? Because we do that at Hart Pond. There's a certain amount of money that's spent every year to address invasives. Hart Pond is bigger than Freeman Lake. So that should be a rule of thumb. I don't know what the number is for Hart Pond either, but I think you're the same vendor, aren't you?
Yes, we are. I actually am the project manager of
So
Hart
do you,
Pond.
roughly what's the annual cost at Hart Pond?
I would actually have to look
So
that
you
up.
don't know that, okay. But is it fair to say that an annual program at Freeman Lake should be equal to or less than the annual program at Hart Pond?
It should be relatively comparable, yes.
One last question, Chris. Who's responsible for presenting a program to the Conservation Commission for Freeman Lake forever? Is that a DPW responsibility? The Conservation Commission is not responsible for the maintenance of Freeman Lake. I don't know who is. But somebody's got to have to come before us again for the kind of program that Emily is talking about. It may be next year, maybe 2 years from now. I just don't know who it is.
Yeah. Probably DPW would be my assumption.
That I am unaware of.
Let's see, we have our DPW director here in the room. Christine, please come forward.
Good evening. Just to answer some of these questions, so that is a DPW responsibility to present. We have hired Solitude, and they are here to present tonight, but if we were to amend or have a different proposal, we would be coming forward at that time with the consultant, or either just DPW or that consultant at the time. I know also came up with a contract, and we are monitoring the contract right now, because you are correct that the contract was for the entire treatment. So we have amended that scope right now, where we're tracking was $65,000 originally. We're down to about $48,000 left remaining in the contract. That would be spent hopefully towards this, and also looking at doing the entire lake surveys that Emily had mentioned. So doing a survey in May or before May, but also then doing an entire lake survey later on. I think we're thinking August or September. And then we would, at that point, look at the next steps or proposing something potentially different.
Thanks for that information.
That's all I had,
Dave?
Chris. That's all I
Good.
had.
All right, Mr. Pete Spahn.
Yes. Hi, Emily. Peter here. How you doing?
Good, how are you?
I want to be sure you could hear me. Couple quick questions. So the application is on the surface, not injected in the roots? Is that correct?
Yes, so this is a broad spectrum application, meaning that it will impact more than just our target species. It will not decimate your native community, but we do apply this subsurfacely. It's not a systemic herbicide where it's needed to take up by the roots. However, even if it was needed by the roots, in terms of efficacy, it would still be a subsurface injection. So this is just a very, very standard way we approach our herbicide applications.
And then I have a fish question. So all the reading I've done call this herbicide, you know, I don't know what the words are, moderately toxic to fish and highly toxic to invertebrates or something like that, which I think is personally, well, I guess I'm not supposed to give an opinion. That's kind of what these things do. My question is, was there any sort of assessment or judgment made about whether the fish population is significant and whether it would be impacted? And if, in fact, there was any thought that the fish were considered important, could you temper the impact if you injected it in the roots, or does it just not work that way?
So the injection itself doesn't necessarily work that way. It wouldn't be any more efficacious just injected into the roots than it would subsurfacely.
Yeah.
What's interesting is that Flumigard SC, flumioxazin, and specifically in Massachusetts, was originally proposed every 4 years, the use except for recreational or beach areas, because there was some concern about fish toxicity. That just has not been the case in literature. I think that was an overestimation that there would be some sort of impact to to native species such as various fish. So it's really not super applicable to Massachusetts. We have seen excellent success with very, very little non-target impact.
All right. And then I had two other quick questions. Any thought to downstream receptors? And I guess that's related to things like the half-life and the mixing in the lake and so forth. But, you know, the drinking water supplies are quite a bit of ways downstream, I think. Was there any thought given to that, or is that any concern there?
Yeah, no, absolutely. This is, funny enough, I was working in the drinking water industry before I came on to Solitude. So this is really all I think about is drinking water implications. And given the very short half-life, rapid release time, rapid response time, you will really not have any downstream implications at all. This is very targeted to your beach area.
Thank you. And then just quickly, my compliments to you and the people planning this. It makes perfect sense to me if you're going to do a thorough lake survey. And again, you know a lot more about this than I do, but a couple of lakes I'm familiar with turned out that there were certain beds of nasty invasives, and therefore the lake survey, if you're going to do the whole lake, ought to help you, if you haven't done it already, help you target areas of biggest concern for invasives. And if you're lucky, you might find they're all concentrated in a few bays or coves. And again, forgive me if you're already assessed all that, but that sounds like a good idea.
Yes, that's exactly what we're going to do. We are looking to get out this spring and fall to do a comprehensive survey to basically document the change in species composition, richness, and abundance from season to season. We'll have a really good handle on how the invasives are spreading. I think this is a really good way to move forward. We'll have empirical data to talk about and analyze as a group that is not subjective. It's not just opinion. So yes, I think survey is absolutely the best way.
Yeah, and that survey would be the whole lake, right?
Depends on the scope of work that the town agrees to.
Okay,
So, yes?
Yes.
all right,
The answer is yes.
thank you.
Mr. John Swenson.
Peter touched upon
I don't know if Emily's still with us.
downstream, the water. Has North Chelmsford Water been talked to about this?
Emily, you still out there online with us, or did we lose?
Yes, I am.
Oh, good.
I am. Can you hear me?
Yes, we hear you now. We thought we might have lost you. Did you hear John's question?
Yes. Can you repeat the question? I wasn't clear on what
Have
the
you
question
talked to
actually
North
was.
Chelmsford Water about this?
Have we talked to other water systems about this?
No, North Chelmsford Water.
The Water District, North
Water
Chelmsford Water
District up
District.
there.
We have not.
Well, I think we should have an opinion from them. I mean, their wells are downstream, and I know they're pretty protective of what's going on up there now. So,
Yes, I agree. I completely agree. Source water protection is an important element of this. I think the key operating factor is that this herbicide is incredibly short acting and rapid release, so that you will not see any non-target or implications downstream. But this is definitely something that we can open the floor up to in terms of communication.
John, I think we have Christine.
oh, all right.
Just to add to that, I mean, North Chelmsford isn't a butter, so I think they were notified through the notification process originally when we were looking into
Right,
it.
yeah.
We can have a follow-up conversation with them, but I will say that, I guess in the conversation, as Emily had said, that there doesn't seem to be a downstream effect, because it's such a targeted, project, but we can, confirm that they were originally notified when we were planning it, that got canceled, but we can continue to have that conversation with
I
them.
think they're a pretty key player up there, you know.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks. John, any more questions right now?
No, Peter asked the one about the fish, but
Yeah.
that was answered.
Good question. Any more questions, comments before we head out to the public? All right, so members of the
Chris, I have a
public.
question.
Oh, yeah, Bill.
Emily, could you just explain to me in layman's terms, you're talking about subsurface injection of the invasives. Draw me a picture of what that looks like. Is there a guy walking around in the beach area with a
Hazmat suit?
hazmat suit or?
I'll interrupt you there. You don't even have to worry. We are, I'm actually going to recommend a fan boat so that we do not even disturb any of the submersed aquatic invasives. So it will literally just be a single operator moving a fan boat across your beach area. Probably should take about 30 minutes, an hour max.
And they drop the chemicals in how?
Subsurfacely, so it's injected underneath the water.
So it's heavier than the water, it just sinks down to the plant?
Correct.
Okay. All right, thanks.
All right. So this is, I don't know, Dave, you had some preliminary comments. Anything before we go to the public?
Well, yeah, maybe I'll just start out. Let me, since this project is no longer an ecological restoration limited project and needs to comply with the performance standards for land under water bodies and waterways, which most commissions don't see a lot of that. Don't know when the last time the commission saw a project that proposed work in that resource area. So I think I'd like to talk a little bit about that. So I think the first thing to do is just, describe that resource area. So I have it up on the screen here. I'd like to read it. If I'm going on too long or I'm getting boring, just let me know. But so land under water bodies and waterways is likely to be significant to public and private water supply, to groundwater supply, to flood control, to storm damage prevention, to prevention of pollution, and to protection of fisheries and wildlife habitat. So in this particular context, fisheries and wildlife habitat are two different interests. One might think of them nominally just being the same interest, the same issue. They're not. They're two different issues. Let me just continue on here. The physical nature of land underwater bodies and waterways is highly variable, ranging from deep organic and fine sedimentary deposits to rocks and bedrock. The organic soils and sediments play an important role in the process of detaining and removing dissolved and particulate nutrients, such as nitrogen and phosphorus, from the surface water above. They also serve as traps for toxic substances, such as heavy metal compounds. Land underwater bodies and waterways in conjunction with banks serves to confine flood water within a definite channel during the most frequent storms. Filling within this channel blocks flows, which in turn cause backwater and overbank flooding during such storms. I think I'll skip the next sentence. Well, I'll continue. An alteration of land underwater bodies and waterways that causes water to frequently spread out over a large area at a lower depth increases the amount of property which is routinely flooded. Those aren't issues here. Additionally, it results in an elevation of water temperature and an increase in habitat in the main channel, both of which are detrimental to fisheries, particularly during periods of warm weather and flows. I think I'll let me see. Land under rivers, streams, and creeks that is composed of gravel. I think I'll skip that one. Land under ponds and lakes, which is the concern here, is vital to a large assortment of warm water fish during spawning periods. Species such as largemouth bass, smallmouth bass, bluegills, pumpkin seeds, black crappie, and rock bass build nests on the lake bottom and substrates within which they and fertilize their eggs. The plant community composition and structure, hydrologic regime, topography, soil composition, water quality of land underwater bodies and waterways provide important food, shelter, migratory and overwintering areas and breeding areas for wildlife. Certain submerged rooted vegetation is eaten by waterfowl and some mammals. Some amphibians, as well as some invertebrate species eaten by vertebrate wildlife, attach their eggs to such vegetation. Some aquatic vegetation protruding out of the water is also used for nesting, and many species use dead vegetation resting on land underwater, but protruding above the surface for feeding and basking. Soil composition is also important for hibernation and for animals which begin to burrow their tunnels underwater. Hydrologic regime, topography, and water quality not only affect vegetation, but also determine which species feed in an area. So I'll just quickly go through a definition here. Land underwater bodies and waterways is the land beneath any creek, river, stream, pond, or lake. Said land may be composed of organic muck or peat, fine sediment, rocks, or bedrock. The physical characteristics of and location of land underwater bodies and waterways are critical to the protection of the interest specified in 310 CMR 10.561. Those are the ones that I read earlier, that I started out reading. So presumption, where a project involves removing, filling, dredging, or altering of land underwater bodies and waterways, which is the case here. This is an alteration because it's changing the vegetative composition. The issuing authority shall presume that such work is significant to the interest specified in 310 CMR 10.561. This presumption is rebuttable and may be overcome upon a clear showing that said land does not play a role in the protection of said interests. In the event that the presumption is deemed to have been overcome, the issuing authority shall make a written determination to this effect, setting forth the grounds on Form 6. So I think I'd just like to interrupt myself here. And so Emily, have you studied the particular interests here? I think in particular, I think it's wildlife habitat. I mean, we've already talked about the concern for water, and sounds like Christine's going to follow up with the water district on that. But have you looked as specifically those particular wildlife habitat functions and values of the proposed project area that would make them significant to the protection of wildlife habitat?
Can you repeat the last bit of that? Sorry, my internet cut out.
Oh, sorry about that. So have you looked at the wildlife habitat functions and values of the proposed project area? In other words, the Varney Beach swimming area, that would make the area significant to the protection of wildlife habitat? And I guess I'm asking the question in the context in that maybe Freeman Lake is so impaired that maybe there isn't, there doesn't need to be a presumption of a significance to the protection of wildlife habitat. But have you looked at, specific functions and values, like some of the ones I just mentioned? I can read them again. Have you looked at?
No, thanks. No, thanks.
Okay.
So in response to that, I think that we haven't looked at those specifics just because this is not what we have been contracted for, and this is not the scope of the work. However, when Solitude does any work with invasive species, aquatic invasive species, we absolutely take into account in our flora and fauna of an environment. So this is something that will be captured when we are exploring our fall and spring comprehensive survey. It's just not something that has been addressed immediately.
So, okay, thank you. So moving on to general performance standards, where the presumption set forth in 310 CMR 10.563 is not overcome, any proposed work within land underwater bodies and waterways shall not impair the following: the water carrying capacity within the defined channel, which is provided by said land in conjunction with the banks, ground and surface water quality, the capacity of said land to provide breeding habitat, escape cover, and food for fisheries, and the capacity of said land to provide important wildlife habitat functions. A project or projects on a single lot for which notices or notices of intent is filed on or after November 1st, 1987, that cumulatively alters up to 10% or 5,000 square feet, whichever is less, of land in this resource area found to be significant to the protection of wildlife habitat, shall not be deemed to impair its capacity to provide important wildlife habitat functions. So let me just explain that, because I think that's going to be a little bit confusing. So looking at the total project area, which was 43,560 feet approximately, that if the area of alteration is 10% or 5,000 square feet, which of that area, which is less, whichever is less, I should say, in the resource area. So we're looking at the total lake now. So the area that's proposed, the project area, is 43,560 square feet. So that's definitely more than 5,000 square feet. So that means that additional alterations above that threshold, above the 5,000 square foot threshold, because I don't know whether that's more or less than the 10%. I think it's probably a much less, but it's still 5,000 square feet. May be permitted if they will have no adverse effects on wildlife habitat as determined by procedures established under 310 CMR 10.60. And what 310 CMR 10.060 says is that a wildlife habitat evaluation needs to be done. So in my opinion, that a wildlife habitat evaluation needs to be done. Now, I think that, and as I think Emily kind of alluded to, should it be done now? Should it be done prior to, any specific proposed treatment. I actually think it would be good to do a preliminary wildlife habitat evaluation. Just kind of look at not only the general characteristics of Freeman Lake, but also specifically for what we know about them already, to sort of say, well, such and such wildlife habitat might be exist on the site, and try and get a preliminary sense of what the impacts would be. So I think I would recommend to the commission that should be a place to start.
Well, thank you, David. Appreciate you sharing that. All right, well, let's move to the public, because I know we have a lot of people out there in the public that are here tonight. So if you want to have questions, come forward. Just come right up to the podium. Give us your name and address for the record. All right.
All right, Wanda Dunn, 60 Willis Drive. Hi, Emily. She's still with us?
For you?
Oh, she's there. Good.
Okay.
Your internet's cutting out every once in a while, Emily.
You know what? I am so sorry. I'm actually at a conference and we have the worst hotel service.
Just some things, first off, to start off. The certified letters that were sent out to all the abutters from Solitude, they had the wrong phone number and wrong email address for our conservation agent. So probably a lot of people aren't here because it did not have the correct information. It had your predecessor on there, Mr. Coons. Didn't have your email address and phone number. So that needs to be changed if there's more letters to be put out.
So let me just interrupt really quick, because those are acquired by the town's assessor website. So that is completely on the town. It's whatever's available to us.
Well, it's
Okay,
good.
we'll let that go.
Wanda, you raised a good point, though. We're going to look into that and figure out what's going on.
Yeah, but she's been working with us for a while, so should have known. But anyways, also on the 2018 Solitude Study Report, it said that fanwort was sparse to trace in that area on the east, where the town beach is, to the water department, on that whole side, that's the east part of the lake. So that study that was done in 2018 said it was sparse to trace. The other thing I wanted to address is, since the town just paid, I don't know how much money to redo the bathhouse and the playground, they did the whole washout area, so there's new culverts, new drainage. Since all that has been redone, we're not gonna have the washout going straight into the lake, for nutrients to feed the weeds. So that's a plus. Number two, from what Courtney from Stormwater had said with our ad hoc committee, was, I guess DPW, somebody went in there last summer to physically take the weeds out, from the swimming area. So if that was the case, I don't see how herbicides need to be used if we have basically two pluses. The weeds should not come up as dramatic this summer because of those two factors. I don't want to jump into herbicides when we don't know what's going to happen until we have surveys done. That was part of our appeal, and DEP, Gary Bogue, had specified that before any herbicides are put into the lake, we're supposed to be doing surveys, because every year is different. 2021, that summer, we had we'll call it island of weeds on top that brought all this to your attention.
It was terrible out there, yeah.
Yeah, well, that happened because the water level was high, we have a lot of geese, and we had a lot of rain. And that happened back in late 90s, early 2000, it happened again. This past summer, what David Warden said in our report in 1995, lower the water level of the lake to where it's supposed to be, at least a foot and a half from the spillway, because that's the way it was designed, and that keeps the nutrients from being, washing the lake. That happened this summer naturally because we had no rain. We had 3 feet out from our shoreline. We were all able to go out, clean up the whole, shoreline from trash, clean everything up. We had no weeds. We actually had people come up to me and say, did they treat the lake? I said, no, This is the way it is when you lower the water level. We have no more washout. That was a recommendation back in '95, and nobody's ever done it. I think that would be a huge help. You don't have to use herbicides. It's natural, doesn't cost the town anything. That was proven this past summer. Also, I wanted to address the Flumigard, that what I found is the water pH is supposed to be below 8.5. I'm wondering if that's the case. Who's going to test the water pH? Because it's, if it's above 8.5, this is not, the herbicide's not going to work. So I don't know who tests the pH of the water.
I don't know, Emily, are you able to answer that question for us?
Yes, absolutely. Oftentimes, we actually test the entire water chemistry. We do extensive DO temp profiles and can report back to the client if that is the agreement per contract. So yes, we definitely can do that, and that is something we are aware of not to treat if there are specific water chemistry parameters that permits us not to.
Okay. And also, our lake is, I would say it's not calm all the time, and when you put this herbicide in, it's supposed to be a very calm day, you know, no turbulation, no wind and everything. So how are you going to guarantee that? Because one, before you treat it, you're going to have to put out to the abutters and everybody that you're going to be treating on this day. So what happens when you go to that day and it's super windy day? You've paid the money to put out all the abutters, you know, to let them know you're going to present this and do this herbicide, and then you come and it's a wicked windy day. It's to me, that's a waste of money. I'm trying to look for more of an eco-friendly way of dealing with this. I did find a company out of Connecticut. They're Eco Harvester, and they are willing to, by Zoom, to present a more eco-friendly way of taking care of the weeds in the lake. They've been all up and down the East Coast as far as Georgia, and they do just a specific rate of, they make it simple, $4,000 for 8-hour day. It's $4,000. He says they don't take lunch breaks. Sometimes they're there for 8.5 hours. The only thing we have questions about, and we have to figure all this out, is they do take the weeds out. They have to do a minimum of 50 feet off the shoreline. Maybe you can talk to the water department. We can have them put over there, because obviously, you know, when the weeds decompose, they go to nothing. It's an option besides using herbicides, because we don't know the long-term effects. And also, Solitude has never mentioned when you do use herbicides to kill the weeds, what happens to those weeds? The beach, where they put the buoys out, the deepest is like 6 feet. So that's all those weeds are going to decompose, go to the bottom of the lake, and you're causing more muck, which is dissolved oxygen, which kills your fish. So we need to address that issue as well. This company I found in Connecticut, they do work with Solitude. They've done it before. When you use these different herbicides, they have to go out there the next day, because what they get is a black sludge from the decomposing weeds that they have to take out, so that doesn't go to the bottom of your lake. Also, as far as the water department, I know Bruce Harper just retired.
Yeah.
So when this first came through, it was for fluoridone, is what he had someone look into to see if it was safe for the wells. So now if this goes through and they're gonna use this herbicide, now North Water's gonna need to know and see if this specific herbicide is gonna be okay for the wells. I think that's all I have for now. I'll let somebody else speak.
Oh, thank you, Ms. Dunn. Appreciate it.
Yep.
All right, next.
Peter Severance, 48A Middlesex Street, North Chelmsford. and I'm a Merrimack watershed advocate, and I think I'm on the Merrimack River Advisory Committee, or somebody emailed me from EPA saying I was, so, anyway. So, I want to talk about, I was part of the appeal of the original notice of intent and order of conditions. I want to review some of the regulatory stuff that's involved here that David already reviewed. I want to go a little bit further. I want to talk about alternatives analysis, because I used to attend a lot of Conservation Commission hearings, and alternatives analysis was always a significant part of it. So let's take a deeper dive into that, and then I'd like to finish up and ask Emily some questions. Hi, Emily, it's Peter, by the way. So we are, but let me just say, it's a little odd to hold this hearing, or hear this hearing, because the order of conditions that you're amending is under appeal, and Mass DEP is awaiting you guys, or the town, to come up with a study. And the committee talked about getting an independent study, not from the people who are going to apply the herbicides, but an independent group who, are of limnologists who can do the water chemistry, do the hydrology, basically update a very comprehensive plan that was done in 1995. And this is required by the, under the, in the, under 310 CMR, the generic environmental impact report and the practical guide. You need to understand the lake and nutrients and the distribution of the plants, where they are, et cetera, before you make, management decisions. And we have data from 1995. I supplemented some of that data with data from U.S. Geological surveys in Stony Brook, which is providing the water to Freeman Lake, up through about 2021, I think. So, there was a lot of momentum for the research that was going to inform decisions that would, of alternatives, and come up with a management plan based on, an independent look at what's going on with this lake. There's interesting stuff. David Coons has a copy of this. I can provide copies of it, plus the up-to-date water quality data, et cetera. I think that's the path we want to go on. And right now, just honestly, Gary said in his email,
Talking about Gary Bogue from DEP.
Gary Bogue who heard the appeal. A more detailed survey of the lake vegetation is required before an herbicide program is implemented. If the town wants to proceed with the superseding order of conditions from him by not withdrawing the notice of intent, then I would require, in a formal request for information, a more detailed vegetation map of the lake, September of this year and spring of next year. We already missed September. Showing species distribution, densities of the lake vegetation, and a more effective way to target the invasive plants. And he wants to see, then it goes on, he wants to see the study from 1995 updated. So that's where we were, and I don't even know technically what the status of your order of conditions is. I think if he was going to deny the appeal, he would have done that months ago. So I think we're moving on beyond your order of conditions, and I don't know what the status of you amending it at this point is.
Let's have David answer that question.
I can comment on that, Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
So, and I mentioned this to Peter as well. I don't think it's productive to get too caught up. I mean, that's a process question. I don't think it's productive to get too caught up on that issue. I think Peter raises a legitimate question. But Mr. Bogue has been very well aware for several months now of what the town's intended way forward, way of proceeding on this has been, and he has not said, no, you need to withdraw the original notice of intent. He has not in any way, shape, or form indicated that this process is not legitimate or that we can't do it this way. So if he feels that way, he needs to let us know.
All I'm saying is he did not deny the appeal. So as far as I know, he's explicit about what he's expecting. He didn't say, well, maybe this is a better way to go, or, whatever. So.
No, I think,
yeah.
Peter, you raised a fair question.
Yeah.
And I
So-
think it's good for us to hear that.
So, David stole my thunder and reviewed some of the regulatory stuff. Let me touch on it really quickly. I've got a couple of key points
Please,
I want to
yeah,
make.
absolutely.
Okay, so the presumption is three of the elements protected by 310 CMR 10 are presumed to be significant: prevention of pollution, protection of fisheries, and wildlife habitat. It was up to the applicant it was their burden to prove that they were not significant in this case. There was no case made to say that this burden, that they didn't meet their burden to say that these interests did not apply here. So David went on to talk about what the general performance standards were. And the exceptions and the exemptions, the exception being if it's less than 5,000 square feet, the exemption being if it's less than 5,000 square feet, and the exception is if a wildlife study is done and that the habitat will be shown not to be affected by this. So I would say we have to have a wildlife study done before this moves forward. It's clear we're worried about wildlife impacts, fish. It's clear wildlife generally, aquatic macroinvertebrates, fisheries, the fish. What I want to focus on just quickly is the issue of pollution. And wanted to touch on this. What do plants do for Freeman Lake? The plants are improving water quality. They are taking key nutrients that are in the sediment, nitrates, but especially phosphorus we're worried about, and they're uptaking that through their roots and incorporating that into, their plant bodies. If the plants were not there, the phosphorus that is, in the sediments would be flipping between, bound and freely available, and it would be entering the water column, and at that point in time, it becomes fertilizer for planktonic algae in the lake. So if you remove the plants, you're removing, a sink for that phosphorus in a seasonal manner. So they improve water quality also beyond the sediments, but in the water column, because every plant is a structural component of a whole host of microorganisms, biofilms, protists, bacteria, microinvertebrates and macroinvertebrates. They are feeding on nutrients. The plants in the biofilms are scouring nutrients out of the water column, okay, and incorporating that into their bodies, and then making it available to the food web of the lake, because you've got snails, you've got herbivorous aquatic insects and everything that are grazing on, the epiphytic life that's growing on the plants up in the water column. Sorry. And then fish and birds, et cetera, are going to be consuming those things. So if you remove the plants, you're also removing the epiphytic communities that are growing on the plants that are also cleaning the water at the same time. And the plants provide habitat for the critters of the food web, the macroinvertebrates, the dragonflies, the true bugs, et cetera, that are, eventually, work their way back out into the larger ecosystem. The plants themselves are providing food for wildlife, whether they be, the diving ducks, the dabbling ducks, the, herbivorous fish, the minnows that are, feeding on the epiphytic life on the plants. They provide nursery habitat and shelter for all forms of aquatic life in the lake. And they're consuming CO2 that is coming from, in lake respiration of dissolved organic matter by bacteria. The plants are taking that up and sequestering the carbon in their bodies. So what happens when you apply herbicides? Advantage is it's minimal labor. All you have to do is shell out a lot of money. The disadvantages are the cost to the town for highly paid, highly specialized, highly equipped, licensed pesticide applicators and their safety, chemical, environmental impact monitoring, which we hope they're doing. Nutrient releases to the rest of the lake. When these plants die, within the first 24 to 48 hours, something like, I want to say 60% of their dry mass leaches into the water column, okay? And that means that a whole pile of nutrients have then become available for free-floating algae in the lake, okay? And the plants just sit there. You have, at that point in time, just dosed the lake with excess nutrients, and that is going to affect turbidity. It is going to enhance the growth of epiphytic algae on other plants in the lake, which is going to partially shade them, and the turbidity, increase in turbidity is going to be shading the other plants in the lake, and they're not going to be doing their job as much as they were. And you're going to increase sedimentation in the lake also, which is a place where a lot of the phosphorus is sequestered. So, as Wanda mentioned, dead contaminated plant debris is going to be left in the swimming area. Our people are going to love walking around in that while they're swimming. No plan to scoop that up at all as part of this. It seems to me the Freeman Lake rotates clockwise. You've got Stony Brook coming in, and in May and June, you're going to have high flows, and that lake water is going to be moving around. So it is kind of wishful thinking to think that the herbicides are going to stay in that 1 acre of land there. I mean, so that would be something you might, at part of, if we had a real plan for this, you might want to plan to see what the drift effects of those herbicides on the lake as they go around. Information on the pesticide itself. I mean, we clearly don't know. I mean, we're only learning a lot about it. What's the dose rate? What's the concentration? Is anybody going to be monitoring the concentration in the water column as it's being applied? Are they going to be monitoring the concentration of the herbicide outside of the target area and as it moves through the lake? I mean, these are all things that I think we need to think about. We need a plan for, and a lot more information on how we're going to be monitoring what's going on here, because it'd be good to know these things. I think it's stuff you want to know. So, what is the alternative? And I have a question for Courtney, and that is, how long has DPW been raking the beach area at Freeman Lake? How many years has that been working for people? I mean, the advantages are no cost, no cost, no additional cost to the town, no chemicals in the water, no dead plant material left in the swimming area. The disadvantage is that it's going to be a localized loss of the aquatic plant community, much like I was talking about before, and the loss of, the impact on water quality and the ecological benefits to the lake if we do that. But hand raking is going to be I will volunteer. I will work with other volunteers. It's an acre. How far off do we have to go? 5 feet deep, cut, and then out deeper, just take that, if there's stuff growing out there that's larger, just get rid of that. Have somebody on standby with a dip net. If there are plant fragments, we'll scoop them up. I mean, we can do this fairly carefully, but I'm willing to bet it's being, people have been raking vegetation out of the beach area for a long time. That would be my guess. So, what is needed going forward, I would say it'd be good to get a idea of the bathymetry of the beach area, how far we're going to go out, because they put out buoys and ropes. We know what that area is, what % plant cover it has, what species. Are they invasive or are they native? I mean, for a beach area, maybe it doesn't make a difference, but we do want, because they're a nuisance, but we want to know that. What their density is. We should be doing this every year so we understand what is going on. And a plan. Are we going to do it once a year, twice a year? I mean, who's going to be out there looking to see if, somebody needs to go back out with the rakes and mesh bags and scooping up this stuff. Oh, and I forgot, the hand raking. You put stuff in bags as you collect it, you take it to compost. The nutrients aren't being released back into the lake. They're, being, put in, on dry land. So whatever excess nutrients that these plants have captured from the inflow from Stony Brook, taking it out of the lake instead of it just let it leach back in.
Well, thank you, Peter. Do you have a final comment to make? I mean, I really appreciate the information.
I know. I had a question about the application. Was the herbicide going to be injected into the sediments, or is it just going to be released into the water column? But Emily, it sounds like it's going to be released to the water column, right?
Correct. This is a very fast-acting, in fact, hours worth of active ingredient that will be
Okay.
Well, thanks.
I am done. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you, Peter. Appreciate the information.
Attention. So.
Raised some excellent questions. Well, ladies and gentlemen, we have a really long agenda in front of us tonight with a number of other items. So my suggestion is, maybe we have time for maybe one more person to ask a question or two, and then we're going to have to continue this meeting to our next meeting so we can move on to the
I'll
agenda.
be extremely brief. I understand
Sure.
your schedule. Tim McCarron, 7 First Ave. Emily, quick question. You mentioned half-life. Could you briefly elaborate on that, please?
Yes, so within the matter of hours, we will see the beginning of efficacy within a maximum of about.
Speak about
48
residual,
hours.
please, not efficacy, residual.
Can you repeat that? I'm sorry.
Can you speak about the residual, not the efficacy of the treatment? What is the residual effect that does not get absorbed into the water? Or what is the residual time that it is still effective, and how long can it be till it's disregarded as safe?
72 hours maximum,
So,
absolute maximum.
So in 3 days' time, it could make its way down across the spillway into our water system. The
No,
fields beyond.
it should be localized to your beach treatment area. Within 72 hours, you should start seeing results. It should be completely dissipated from the area within.
Assuming there's no current or drift that carries it within that 72-hour period over our spillway. Next question. Can you describe briefly, please, the depth of water column that the fanwort roots will survive in?
Can you repeat that question? I'm sorry.
How deep will the roots go in fanwort?
Depths can go up to 15, 20 feet.
All right, another quick question. I'll make it very brief. If we were to lower the lake, say 3 feet, would the residual systemic growth be captured in the ice when the water is raised back in the spring? Will the roots be ripped out?
The roots will be ripped out if you proceed forward with, not ripped out, but will be controlled if you were to proceed with a herbicide treatment, yes.
That's not my question. All right, very quick to the point. The DPW has just cleaned up and accessed the emergency valve. Lake Massapog does a drawdown every year. They have little to no weed problems. They have a cyclical up and down. Ice rips the roots out, rips the systemic growth. They raise it back up. And if not, when the water is down, they go out there, they clean it up. Each bordering waterfront resident cleans it up themselves. Simple solution. Why can we not address this problem instead of all this BS with chemicals?
Well, thank you, sir. Again, ladies and gentlemen, we've been at this hearing for about an hour or so, which is good. We've had good dialogue. What I'd ask is that we continue this hearing to our next meeting. There's obviously a number of questions have been raised, and some recommendations from our agent. So that would be my suggestion is we come back, and again, we can continue with more public input. It's a public hearing. David?
So I think, specifically, the additional information that should come back is, again, just what I recommend is that some kind of a preliminary study be done. Maybe it's just based on the what kind of natural community that this is. I think that's probably a good place to start. The natural communities in Massachusetts have been classified, and I think a determination should be made of what what category Freeman Lake fits into. And then we should make there should be a presumption that that the land underwater is significant to breeding habitat, escape cover, and food for fisheries, number one, and to come up with the wildlife habitat functions. Again, just based on a preliminary assessment of the resource area, maybe the 2118 survey can figure into this preliminary study. Again, maybe the impairment ranking of the lake can also fit into this. But I think that some sort of an assessment of what the wildlife habitat functions in the resource area are, and then just look at what the impact will be to the use of the herbicide. And again, I know we don't have all the information that's available that ultimately I think will be needed. For instance, I don't think we know what the concentrations will be of the herbicide, because I think that will depend on the specific conditions at the time of treatment. But just in a very generic sense, if some sort of an assessment could be made on what the impact to fisheries and wildlife habitat functions will be, and probably surface water quality as well. So I think that should be the first thing, is the preliminary study. The second thing is certainly from what I'm hearing here is that there's a strong desire to look at alternatives, and so I think that needs to be addressed as well. I think we need to carefully look at all of the available alternatives, and ultimately the commission needs to make a decision on what will provide, what will present the least adverse impact or least impact to the interests that the commission is supposed to protect. So I think that's the other thing that should be done, is to look at the different alternatives.
All right. Well, thank you, David. I appreciate that. Emily, were you tracking on those comments?
Maybe not.
I do not, but I am available for any contact and questions. I'm definitely invested in this project, so I am here for whatever is needed.
Very good. Very good. All right, can we have a motion then to continue to our...
Mr. Chairman.
Yes, Dave.
I know we've gone way too long.
We have gone long.
Tonight's hearing is to approve an amendment to an original order of conditions. What was the original order of conditions?
The original order of conditions allowed the treatment of the entire lake, with a herbicide. It was filed under an ecological restoration limited project, which was a different
But
set
it
of
did
proposals.
not address what you just said should be done, which I happen to agree with.
Because it didn't have to be done, the issues that I just
I don't want to
mentioned.
get in a big debate. My opinion, based on what I've heard to date, is the request to amend should be denied, and that we should overturn the original order of conditions, and we should ask the applicant, whoever it is, to start from the beginning and do it right. I don't know how we overturn the original order of conditions, and I don't know if this board is of a mind to do that, but that's where I stand. I've heard enough information tonight that I think we consistently have put the cart before the horse, and there's no urgency. So let's do it right. That's,
Well, thank you,
I'm sorry,
Dave.
I'm sorry.
More comments from the commissioners?
All right, I move we continue
Mr.
this.
Severance, you had your hand up, I mean,
I just
sir,
wanted
right up to the podium.
Gary Boat was suggesting you could withdraw the order of conditions.
No.
Or, I'm sorry, the applicant could withdraw the notice of intent, and that was one of his
Okay.
suggested.
We'll
outcomes.
address the
Okay.
we do it
All right,
administratively.
very good. All right, back to our internal discussion. I saw some hands raised over here. John, do you have something?
No.
No, we're good. So
When's the next meeting?
the next meeting.
January 24th?
24th.
So I will move to continue to the 24th if you'd like, Mr. Chair.
I'd like to continue to the 24th, but I think part of it is, we have some information requests for the applicant, but I think part of it, is really gives us a little time to take a good look at what Dave's suggesting. I mean, where are we going here with the whole application? And, what makes best sense, as we all do? I mean, what makes best sense for the town as a whole? And, do we want to continue to invest a lot of time and cost and analysis in this project or not? I mean, I think we got to take a good look at the concerns that Dave has. And Dave kind of, been a senior member here for a lot of years. Value his gut instincts on this one for sure. So that's my opinion. I say we continue it to the 24th and give us, our agent kind of working with those involved and the applicant kind of.
Make a motion.
So moved.
Second.
Continue to the 24th, seconded by Dave. So a motion by Mark, seconded by Dave. Any discussion? All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Unanimous. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for a good hearing. We'll see you all on January 24th.
I make a motion for a 10-minute break.
Yeah, let's take a break. We're going to take a break for a moment, just to stretch.
I think
Ladies and gentlemen, let's, where's Peter?
Peter's missing.
Anybody see Peter out there?
Then we got Luna in the game. Oh, my God, it's gonna be a long night.
No, he's going to.
Thank you, Vivian.
Yeah, he's gonna put it
All right, we're missing one commissioner.
I think Joel's gonna get him.
Thank you, Vivian.
somebody's getting them, all right.
Vivian, just shut the door.
No, you're not allowed to do that. It's a violation of the open meeting law.
They can open the door. It's not locked.
Yeah, I think you're right, David. Open meeting law violation, believe it or not.
I should have had a relapse tonight.
Yeah.
Here he comes.
Yeah, poor Bill.
have a relapse.
Bill, yeah, we might have a couple of relapses here.
Call the ambulance.
All right, here we are. All right, ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to call the meeting back to order.
This is 10 minutes.
Thank you, everyone. That was a long hearing before us. The next item we have on tonight's agenda is a notice of intent from MMP Construction with respect to 11 Tremont Road. Ian Aisley from Meisner Brem Corporation representing the applicant. Do we have a legal notice for that, Carl?
Yes, we do, Mr. Chair, pursuant to the
Thank you,
provisions of the Massachusetts Wetlands Protection Act, MGL 131, Section 40, and the Chelmsford Wetlands Bylaw, Chapter 187, the Chelmsford Conservation Commission will conduct a public hearing in room 204 at the Chelmsford Town Offices, 50 Billerica Road, on Tuesday, January 10th, 2023, at 7:05 PM to consider the notice of intent filed by MMP Construction on behalf of property owner Robert Strain for proposed work within riverfront area Deep Brook and 100-foot buffer zone to the bordering vegetated wetlands at 11 Tremont Road, further identified as Assessor's Map 2, Block 4, Lot 12. The project entails construction of an attached garage, associated drainage, grading, landscaping, and removal of existing pavement. Mr. Chair.
Hey, thank you very much, Carl, for the legal notice, and now we'll have an overview presentation from the applicant.
Good evening, my name is Ian Ainsley. I'm the engineer representing the applicant. Can you hear me okay?
Sure.
Yes.
Yeah, but if we need to quiet,
We can't, yeah.
we can tell them to stop
Can't
yelling.
close the door, though.
No, you just tell them to be quiet.
I always like to make sure you can hear me.
So do we.
From Meisner Brem Corporation, I believe the applicant, who is also the contractor, Matt Palmer, is on the Zoom call as well, if there's any questions for him. I have something that should hopefully be a little bit simpler than the previous project. This is an existing
I hope so.
single-family house at the end of Tremont Road. It was built in the 60s.
Excuse me, where's Tremont Road?
It's right on the border of
Which town is it in?
It's in two towns.
It straddles.
It is. It's you can actually see it here. The property line is, the town line bisects the property.
Does he pay two taxes?
That I don't know.
Could you bring that right up here if you could? Just
you-
bring that right up.
We've got.
I know, just bring it up.
Yeah.
Bring it right up for a second, okay? All right, thanks. All right? Good, okay. All right, these guys.
I know where it is now.
All right, okay, good.
Yeah.
Okay, great.
I don't know if that
Okay.
helps.
All right, thanks.
Hey, thanks a lot. Appreciate it.
I can move that around if you want.
I don't even know how to use one of these.
So it is on the town line. The building, the work, the resource area are all in Chelmsford, which is why we're here. There is three resource areas on this property. One is floodplain, one is riverfront, and one is bordering vegetated wetlands. We are not proposing any work in the floodplain. We are proposing work in the bordering vegetated wetland buffer and the riverfront area. So like I said, this is an existing single-family house. What he wants to do is remove a portion of the existing paved driveway and construct an attached garage directly next to the house. That garage would be Roughly as far from the wetland as the existing pavement is now. He will be removing some of that pavement and removing an existing shed as part of that as well. If you look at the net area, impervious area on the property, it would be an increase of about 160 square feet. In order to mitigate that, we are proposing an infiltration system in the backyard, plastic Caltech chambers that will take the roof runoff from that detached garage or attached garage, and that is to, like I said, mitigate the small increase in impervious area. I do want to point out that since this house was built in the 60s, it is exempt from the local bylaws setbacks to the bordering vegetated wetland. I believe that only applies if it was built in the 90s or later. I'm not sure the exact year. So that is the gist. We are not cutting down any trees. It is just removal of pavement, construction of the garage, construction of the chambers for the drainage, and we'll be installing a filter sock, perimeter erosion control around the work. And this is all, like I said, taking place in existing lawn or impervious area, so there's no tree cutting. And I'm happy to answer any questions.
Great. Well, thanks a lot. Let's see if the commissioners have questions. Carl, starting with you.
What are you going to do with the driveway material, the pavement?
They're going to remove it and take it off-site.
To where?
Wherever is required by the local regulations.
Okay. And you said no trees being removed?
Correct.
And you're going to, I'm assuming I'm looking at, you're going to have wattles and protection?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, filter sock.
Okay.
Thanks.
Yeah, I
Thanks,
think
Carl.
it's shown on the plan, right?
Yeah, that's.
Yeah.
Wraps around the downstream.
Okay.
Groundwater there?
What was that?
What's groundwater? You plan on dewatering? If you do you have anything
I
for
don't
that?
expect a groundwater issue. If you look at the topography on the site, where the garage is going looks about 10 feet higher than where the wetland is. The wetland is usually a pretty good indicator of where the water table is, so I don't expect for the chambers or the garage to run into the water table.
Okay, can you roll it back up again, Dave? Roll it back down, whatever. When you excavate, can you make sure that you cast to the front of the house with the soil
What do you mean?
when you're digging and you're excavating?
Pull the material front.
Bring the material up.
Yeah, okay, so
Right.
pull it away from the resource area.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
And we can, if you wanted that to be a condition of the permit.
Oh, it is?
Yep.
Yeah.
We'd be happy to do that.
Yeah. And David has the normal conditions we require anyways. I think that's it, not a big deal.
All right. Thanks, Mark. Bill?
I'm good.
Good. Dave?
I know our bylaws don't apply because the house was built in 1965. Why is the garage being placed where it is? Is it for aesthetic reasons?
It's for several reasons. One is they want it attached so they can go directly from the garage into the house without having to go outside. Part of it is the building setback. They can't put it any closer to the road because the front building setback
because
is there.
Building by,
Yeah,
building by?
the zoning.
Because
And,
I was going to request that you pull it forward because that would move it further away.
It's actually essentially touching the front setback line.
No other
It's
questions.
it's 40-foot setback. Looks like it's 41.1. So.
Okay.
And the other reason is it's where the driveway is now, so we thought that would be a good kind of exchange of impervious area.
Okay. All right, Peter?
Any idea if this lot was filled in the mid-'60s?
I'm not sure. I wouldn't be surprised.
It looks like there was at least a lot of regrading
Yep.
done out there. Whether or not it was actual fill-in, just don't know.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, good. John?
Well, I'm good with it, as long as they cast the material to the front, nothing headed
Okay.
towards the
All right,
wetland.
well, we can make that a condition.
It's only a 4-foot wall, right? The
Yeah,
garage.
yeah, it's not going to be a
So
basement.
it's not gonna be a basement or nothing.
All right, good. David?
Just a question related to what Mark already asked, and I apologize, I probably should have asked it earlier. So you're confident that the groundwater is sufficiently below the surface such that the roof infiltration system will function properly.
Yes, and based on the publicly available soils mapping from the USGS, it looks like it's sandy material, which is typically low water table, high infiltration rate.
Just the other comment I'll make is that this does a really good job satisfying the riverfront area performance standards, so I recommend approval.
Good. Good. All right, well, this is a public hearing, so.
Mr. Chair, can
Oh,
I
yeah,
ask one
Carl.
more question?
Yeah.
I'm just wondering, does it make sense because of the town line with Tingsboro to give them a courtesy notice of this hearing and the approval? I don't know if that makes sense or not.
They don't need us hear it.
I mean, the butters were notified, so any butters would have been notified.
Never mind.
And we did notify abutters in both towns.
So that would be both towns, yeah, both
Butters list.
towns.
I mean, I can certainly email Tingsboro a copy of the order of conditions.
Just good neighbors, so.
Yeah, oh, it's good to, keep up good relations with our neighbors, is right. This is a public hearing, so if somebody from the public has a question or comment on this hearing, please raise your hand and then come forward. We'll take it from there. All right. We don't see any public questions or comments. So we have
We close the hearing?
a motion by Dave to close the hearing.
Second it?
Carl on the second to close the hearing. All those in favor, close the hearing. Aye. Any opposed? None unanimous. And so now we're looking for an order of conditions. I think I saw a special one, just having the
Material forward.
yeah, pull the material forward, cast the material forward. But the others, otherwise standard.
I move we issue a standard order of conditions for 11 Tremont Ave, with one special condition that the excavating material from the garage be pulled forward when the excavation is.
Well, that's actually a standard. There's a standard
it?
condition in there that requires any excavated fill to be immediately removed from the buffer zone.
Yeah, but I agree. Is it,
They're removed and pulled forward. All right. Motion by Dave. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second by Carl. Any discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Unanimous. Thank you, sir, very much.
Thank you.
Just follow up with our agent and paperwork in due course. All right, we're just signing the order of conditions now as it makes its way down. The next item on tonight's agenda is a notice of intent. This was an after-the-fact filing situation continued from September 27, 2022, with respect to 120 Gorham Street.
So I can give a quick update on that. There's actually been a request for a continuance to May 23rd. I was out on the site today. It didn't look quite as good as what I was hoping. Mr. Silva actually did put in some erosion control in the location where I directed him to. Problem is we've had a lot of rain recently, and it showed. There's additional erosion beyond what I saw earlier that's starting to happen on the site. I told him that he needs to put in yet additional erosion control ASAP, which he says he's going to do. So I think it's better to keep the hearing open because
Oversight.
Because a lot of this is being done under an enforcement order. If the hearing is closed and then there's something unforeseen happens, then another enforcement order has to be issued. That's just, I think, more unnecessary administrative work at the very
Dave,
least.
is this applicant just agreeing with you whenever you raise issues with him? And
Yeah,
then
he's doing everything.
It doesn't happen?
What's that?
And then it doesn't happen?
No, he's doing everything I'm asking. It's just that number one, it's a bad time of year to be trying to do this.
Yeah, but he should know that.
He does. I mean,
Because you're asking for a continuance until when?
May 23rd.
Till May.
Yeah.
For the weather.
Yeah, that's basically it. I've told him that if there's any impact to the wetlands, it's gonna have to be corrected. And
What's he doing, Dave? Is he still removing fill? That's what he needs to do?
no, he's not removing any more fill. And now with all the erosion, it really needs to be regraded again. Needs to be smoothed out. and then plant it. It's just a bad time of year to be doing that.
Right.
If
There's
we,
gonna be problems in the spring with erosion there?
Yeah, potentially, but I think once I think a big problem is that the ground is frozen, and so it's difficult to move soil around right now. It's difficult to stake things in. And now I gather where we may have some heavy rain on Friday, but it's supposed to be warm. I've told him that, if the temperature is such that the soil is soft enough to be able to work with, then he's got to do it. I mean, he certainly agreed to let me monitor the situation regularly. I think it's just something that I need to do.
I just think a lot can happen between now and May.
True, that's why I
Whereas
need,
looking at it every 2 weeks in our meetings, we can at
Well-
least give you more pressure.
well, right, but I'm.
No, I meant give you more
In a
authority.
good way, in a good way.
More authority to put pressure on it.
Yeah, and I'm looking at it regularly anyway, and certainly if I see a problem, that's certainly something that can be.
So you don't have a problem with deferring it for 4 months?
No, I
5
don't.
months?
No, because
6 months,
I'm monitoring, number one, I'm monitoring it closely, and number two, if there's something that major, suddenly something unexpected happens, and something major needs to be done to correct it, he's assured me he will do it. And,
So I guess what I'd like to do is kind of taking off Dave's concern, maybe I think I'm okay, continue it to May 23rd, but I'd like to still kind of have us just put it on for, an agent discussion with us for oversight
I can put
purposes.
it in my report,
Exactly.
certainly.
That kind of addresses the concern, which I think is a valid one. Keeps the oversight going.
Agreed.
I don't know, anybody else comfortable with that approach here? If you are, let's have a motion and a second, and we can vote.
I make a motion to continue to the date you said.
May 23rd.
23rd.
Second.
All right, motion by Carl, seconded by Mark. Any discussion before we vote? No discussion, all those in favor, aye, any opposed, unanimous. All right, well, thanks very much. So that one's done. Then the next up we have on the agenda is notice of intent, DIV Riverneck LLC. This was continued from December 13th, 2022. This was with respect to 191, 195, 199, and 201 Riverneck Road. And we have Zachariah Korniak and Ty and Bond, Inc., representing the applicant. And let's pick this one up then. I know we did have a site walk, and most of the commissioners were out there last week at a site walk. I know I went by the site myself today at lunchtime and took a good look at the site as well, too. But let's just pick it up from where we were then. We'll have an overview from the applicant as to what's happening. Sir.
Good evening. Kevin McCutcheon with Ty and Bond, civil engineer involved with the project. Today, we were here before you in December, did an overview of the site and the adjacent resource areas. And today, we're going to focus on the stormwater management system. Give an overview of that. We'll try and go through the system pretty efficiently. Try not to take too much time, but feel free to ask questions as I go.
Okay, so what I'd like to do, Kevin, is start with the part of the system that's shown on the screen here. So what we see here is we see a couple of flared end sections, which are the inlet to this bioretention basin. So just some of the things I'd like to cover, among others, are the portion or portions of the project site that each one of these flared end sections serves, and then what happens at that point. And I mean, there's some under drains. There's an outlet control structure regulating flow to a detention basin. And then from there, it appears to be tied into the compensatory flood storage area. So even if one is fairly well versed in the design and operation of stormwater management systems, this is a little bit complicated. So if we could just sort of, I don't want to say slowly because, but just I guess methodically, go through how this stormwater management system operates, and in particular, because these are concerns that have been raised by our peer reviewer and members of the public, look at those components that require infiltration and soil testing, and like seasonal high groundwater testing, and then for those components to do, if you could just tell us the current status of that testing. So.
And again, if you can kind of just take it to, again, as a non-engineer, if you can kind of keep it at a level for a non-engineer like myself, we've got engineers on here, but non-engineer overview. And again, for the general public, this stormwater system is very important. It's very important because it really impacts water quality, and we have, drinking water wells within Zone 1 distance. So it's really important that this stormwater management system works right, and we want to understand it. So anyway.
Well said. Thank you.
Thank you, David, for the summary. And yes, it is. It's a complex system. There's a lot of parts to it. Part of the treatment train, making sure we're not depending all on any one particular area, any one particular system. Partially driven by feedback we got during the planning board process early on about wanting to make sure we can isolate the flows from the loading dock area. So if there were to be a leak, that could be isolated, as well as the initial infiltration and soil testing that was done on the site helped lead this design. So we're looking at here, and I don't know if it'll help. I have a laser pointer. I don't know if that's okay to point to try and help.
Either point to it or go up to the screen yourself and point.
Sure. Yeah. If you can hear me from up there, and I'm not blocking the view, I'll give that a shot.
And then I'll work with you when we actually need to change the screen.
So just
yeah, I don't. That's a good question. Maybe you can't be heard if you leave the podium. Sorry about that. Good point.
So
Thank
maybe
you.
you can use your mouse here.
Thanks.
Yeah, I brought
Thanks,
it for,
Vivian.
At least I brought it for something. Okay, for perspective on where we are on the site, most are probably familiar, but this is the northern portion of the site, farthest away from River Neck Road. So this would be the back side of the building, on the abutting the adjacent town property with the resource areas. So if I can, of course, the laser pointer doesn't show up on TV. So,
So the two bright green stars are the flared end sections. That's the inflow.
So those are just prior to the flared end sections where all the flow from the site discharges to this basin. We have two main trunk lines that discharge to that biofiltration basin. Just prior to that discharge, each trunk line has a hydrodynamic separator, water quality unit. So it's a manhole type structure with swirl chambers and baffles that separates out sediments will sink to the bottom and floatables will float to the top. So that's part of the stormwater treatment system.
So I'll just scroll down a little bit and point that out. This file is so big it takes a while to move. So here's actually this is actually going to another component. So this is an infiltration system right here, and I can see that it handles the roof, a portion of the roof, and a portion of the parking area. Right.
Correct. So you can start to see a light red outline of what is the drive, portions of the drive and the loading dock behind the parking garage. Within that outline, that is the portion of the site that does not drain to the two infiltration systems on the side. We're seeing one of the two in that darker blue box there. So everything from pretty near to that back wall of the warehouse building towards the street, all the entire building roof and all the paved areas that's towards the street, not within that red outline, that all drains to either the one small rain garden in the front of the property, as well as these two proposed infiltration systems. So that captures all flow that touches the hard surfaces, except for in the back. And those systems are substantially sized. They all, the rain garden and the two infiltration systems also have those green stars indicating the hydrodynamic separators. That's part of the water quality treatment. So between the deep sump catch basins with the hoods and those hydrodynamic separators, we get the TSS pre-treatment that's needed for prior to infiltrating into the ground to meet that criteria. So those systems are sized large enough such that all the flow that enters those systems in a 2-year design storm is maintained and infiltrates in the ground. There's no flow out of those systems towards the back of the site. So in the larger storms, they start to overflow, and then they go through those trunk lines into the where we started the view, the large biofiltration in the rear of the site. So that in the 2-year and less storms, only the rear of the site flow from that actually makes it to those systems in the back.
So Kevin, you see the mouse here. So that's actually draining the roof, right?
Correct. There's a piping around the perimeter of the building that brings the roof, half the roof to this system, half the roof to the system on the other side of the building.
So this plan doesn't show it, but that must be gutters and downspouts.
Those will all be internal to the footprint of the building and picking up the headers that'll come along the face of the building on the front and the two sides, picking up the headers and sending what would typically be a downspout, sending that roof drainage to the system.
So will that be shown on the architectural plans rather than on these engineering plans?
Yes, that's anticipated to be on the architectural, the downspouts.
Now you see where I'm pointing to here. That looks like it's an open section of the pipe. Why is that open?
Not intended to be open. It's just the pipe coming from the front and the back of the building, wiring together and entering into the system.
Okay, so that's not open. There's no way there's going to be any flow out of there.
Correct. No, all the flow from the roof is sent directly to each of the infiltration systems.
Now it's presumed that the flow off the roof is clean, right?
Correct.
So it doesn't need to go into a water quality a water quality structure.
Correct. The pavement areas go through the water quality structure. The roof discharges directly to.
So where is, I'm trying to find the water quality structure.
It was on the green star just on the bottom side there.
This one right here?
So all the pavement, all the driveway on the right side, the piping comes back south, turns in, goes in that water quality structure and into the infiltration system. All the pavement on the frontage of the building that drains to the stormwater system. You're seeing on the bottom portion of the screen, which then flows into the infiltration system. Aside from the eastern driveway, there's a catch basin with a green star there. That captures part of that driveway and sends some flow into that system and that rain garden as well. And that rain garden there is the one that's called out without a liner. So that one's far enough away from the resource areas and high enough in elevation that can be infiltrated. So that is the rain garden without a liner that will infiltrate.
Okay, so what is the status of testing for that?
So we did preliminary testing to figure where would be best to site these locations, and at that time we were also getting some initial input from the planning board, and there was the final test locations need to be witnessed by the town engineer, and there was a turnover in the town. So as we were getting comments and we weren't able to schedule that, we put a pause on doing additional testing. But we had enough information that we can do what we believe is a conservative design based on what we have.
What were you testing for?
I'm sorry.
What were you testing for?
So we dug down test pits. Included in the stormwater report, we included our test pit information that we did initially to find the groundwater, to do infiltration tests, And we focused those initially on the rear of the property and came to the conclusion that that isn't going to be the ideal location for those infiltration tests, for the infiltration systems, proposed infiltration
So
systems.
that is yet to be determined?
So we are proposing confirmatory infiltration tests at the actual
How far
locations.
down did you hit groundwater?
We got, did you want to chime in?
Yeah,
or-
let me just fill in real quick. My name's Zach Chorniak. I'm the project manager for Ty and Bond, kind of overseeing all this. And I was in charge of the geotech program that was initially completed. Test pits were performed at the previous infiltration areas, and what you do is you look for, modeling for seasonal high groundwater. We're looking for the soil textures, and that data goes into the calcs that, determine how big these systems have to be, so we can infiltrate enough. We quickly realized that down farther toward the back of the site, closer to the wetlands, the seasonal high groundwater was, I think it was 4 feet or so deep. So that we'd have to mound up the system to make it work. Not ideal in the resource, close to the resource area, so we're moving stuff back up. As we went through the planning board process, it was quickly pointed out, you have to have the city engineer observe those test pits, and we fully realize that. So I just want to point out that, the planning board process is still ongoing. There's some synergies between Concom and planning board, and it will be a condition of that we have to do test pits where our facilities are now that are witnessed by them, so we can back check the calculations that we're using with the assumptions that we're making. But we're confident it will work, so that's kind of the process that we're still currently in now. Does that make sense?
Yeah, Dave, that answers your question, right?
How far down did you hit groundwater?
I'd have to look at that. We noticed modeling, which is the indicator of seasonal high groundwater, that was somewhere between 4 and 5 feet deep. I'm not sure we saw standing groundwater at the time.
And did you determine the condition of the ground between surface and groundwater?
Condition in terms of soil texture?
Materials.
Yeah, it's a well-graded gravel, lots of sand. As soon as you get deeper a little bit, you hit some finer material, but not much. It's
In
kind of-
all 3 areas?
In the one area, or 2 areas that we did test pits for the original system. We haven't done the ones currently.
You're aware of one of Mr. Luna's comments in one of his reports?
The noted peat material?
Yeah.
Yeah, yep.
Did you?
We haven't test pitted that other test pit
Okay.
that's over in that area yet, so we'll have to see that. If that's something that comes up, that'll be a.
He was also suggesting it was all clay?
I haven't seen
It
the
does, the USGS soil map does show type A soils, good sandy soils around
So-
the areas that
So we
aren't
don't know where
urban
his,
fill.
we don't know where his comment came from. I'm just asking that generally. Because you're looking at data that says it wasn't clay, right?
the data we have is, we have some drilling data out there that's scattered throughout the site for the purposes of building foundation calculations. We have a test pit that was done where the old infiltration system was proposed. What we found to date so far is, well-graded sandy soil, but there's more geotech to be done that, will need to be confirmed by the town witness and their engineer to confirm that those soil materials exist that we're gonna be infiltrating in.
So I think this might be an appropriate time to say, and I've mentioned this already, so I know it's not a surprise, that I think there's a possibility, if not a likelihood, that the commission will want to keep the hearing open, pending that additional
Certainly.
soil testing.
Yep, fully
Okay,
expected.
so-
Sure.
Yeah, absolutely,
Okay.
yeah, absolutely, yeah, that's definitely.
Yeah, as a commissioner, I need some information that either supports or disagrees with Mr. Luna's comments in his letters, because they're public documents.
Same thing goes with the peer review on the stormwater design, stuff is changing a little bit on the planning board side. They have a peer review process for stormwater that you guys were interested in making sure that was complete. It's almost complete on that end, so that's another, ball that's still in the air that needs to be completed as well. That's why I want to recognize there's the planning board process, the Concom process, we're trying to.
With
help everybody
synergies, as you said.
Thank you.
What's that?
With synergies, as you said,
Correct.
Yeah.
He hopes.
Okay, so if there are no other questions on that particular component, let's go back. So there's the flow that comes out of this infiltrator.
So only in larger than a 2-year storm event will flow over top and leave this these systems on the side that take care of all the drainage from the building and the front of the property. And then those will also start to then contribute to the biofiltration system in the rear of the property.
Okay, thank you, because I did want to ask about the thresholds. So, yeah, what happens in the, so you've looked at the 2-year, 5-year, 10-year?
25 and 100.
So it maybe if you could talk about those, or at least the thresholds, what happens differently as you increase the size of the storms?
So if, I know it's a little slow, but on the bottom left corner of this drawing, or I could read off some of the numbers, I have the peak flow and volume leaving the site, the comparison table from existing conditions to proposed conditions.
Okay, well, I think you just mentioned that there's flow out of this infiltrator only starting at the 2-year storm.
Correct, but the comparison table would be the discharge off the site.
Okay. So it's down on the lower left, did you say?
Correct.
Let me see if I can get there.
And this is a table that's taken out of the stormwater report that was provided, just for convenience on presentation purposes, included on this sheet. This sheet is also, just want to note that this sheet is part of the drawing set that was originally provided, part of the application. The size of the project is split on 2 sheets, so we stitched it together for this figure here and added the color for presentation purposes to follow along. But this is the comparison table for what discharges off the property towards the town off-site. And there's 3 analysis points, and then the total project area. Essentially, the analysis points 2 and 3 are rather negligible. They're along the periphery of the site. So the bulk of the flow is analysis point 1, which is the existing 2 buildings and the parking associated with that, which currently has 3 discharge points. The 2 discharge points associated with the original building that was built in the mid-'80s. That was conventional stormwater conveyance with no treatment, no detention system. It just collects flow and discharges it off-site untreated. The second building, existing building, built in the late 90s, that does have I'd call a relatively small infiltration system that takes flow from the roof of the second building. Would be the western of the 2 buildings. Takes a little infiltration from the roof, and then from there drains to the existing stormwater basin that's behind that western building. And from there, there's 1 discharge off-site from there. So there's total of 3 discharges off-site.
Okay,
two from the eastern building, 1 from the western. And the sum of those, you could see the comparison table, a drastic decrease in flows from existing conditions to proposed. We're talking on the discharge analysis point 1, where 8.7 was the CFS in a 2-year storm event. That's reduced to 0.5 CFS leaving the site in a 2-year storm event. Go up to a 10-year storm event. Existing condition is over 19 CFS. Proposed conditions reduced to 0.7, less than 1 CFS. 25-year storm event. Existing condition 27, over 27 CFS, reduced down to 3.01, 3 CFS. So the proposed stormwater management systems are sized very significantly. They're designed to meet the Mass DEP stormwater standards and the resulting flows off-site. The last one being the 100-year storm event. Existing condition 41 CFS, proposed condition 36.3 CFS.
So let's see if we can understand this a little bit more qualitatively. So I think you said starting at the 2-year storm that basically this bioretention basin starts to fill up, correct?
So in the less than 2-year storm event, or if storms 2 and below, the rear loading dock area will discharge directly to that biofiltration system, has pretreatment with deep sump catch basins with hoods and the water quality units. So the water is pretreated, and then will enter that bioretention basin. Now, that basin is the one that's called out, and there was a reference on the detail that having a liner, because as we mentioned with the groundwater is anticipated to be too high in that area, and so that will not infiltrate into the ground, but it is, the water quality is treated through the filter media and the plants and the mulch within the biofiltration system.
But so when it begins to fill up,
Yep.
that at that point, the outflow, the flow out of the basin, yeah, because you said there's no infiltration because it doesn't have a liner. But in the beginning, when it begins to fill up, that's handled by the under drains, right?
Correct. So the two little darker blue lines going east to west through that basin are the under drains. So the flow from the loading dock will enter the basin, filter through the filter media, get collected by those under drains, and then discharge. If you follow the blue line, it goes around the compensatory flood storage area, which is the yellow triangular shape, connects with the existing piping that discharges off-site and discharges at the same location as a significant amount of the flow in the existing site.
Okay, but at some point, the outlet control structure kicks in.
Correct.
At what point is that? At
Correct.
what storm is that?
So I believe it's at the 10-year, you start to get enough flow from the loading dock and the contributing sides of the site, in front of the site, that the water level in that biofiltration gets to an elevation that enters the outlet control structure that's on the southwest corner into that blue rectangle. So that's an additional storage tank. So for the larger storm events.
What's the difference in height between a 2-year storm and a 10-year storm? Or in terms of volume, roughly?
Oh, that's a good one. That's a good one. For the total, I have the number for the total site, and the entire site that doesn't infiltrate goes through this basin. So this will be a good representation. Did you ask for the 10-year, was it?
Yeah, I'm just trying to get a sense of the difference in magnitude between the two. Not the absolute number, but
Are you talking about the storm or the drainage?
I'm talking about how much capacity is in the system for a 10-year storm event versus a 2-year storm event.
Volume-wise, I have it in acre feet as the existing discharges 0.94 acre feet. The existing site does, and this is a 2-year storm event. The proposed 2-year storm event is 0.43, so reduces it by half.
Okay.
And now if you jump up to a 10-year storm event, the proposed is 0.621, which is still less than the 2-year existing volume. So, and that goes all the way up to a 100-year storm proposed is 3.3 acre feet, whereas existing is 5.2. So
Dave, are you seeing any technical changes in the definition of a 2-year storm event, 10-year storm event, 100-year storm event?
I think that does change every so often.
Is every so often, like every couple of years or every 10 years?
I don't know, but I know with climate change, it has been changing
Well,
frequently.
that's why I asked the question. So this would be, so when we say 2-year storm event, we're talking about
Current.
whatever the standard is today.
Correct.
Which could change in the future.
Correct.
So you're not anticipating a change in the definition of a 2-year storm event, are you? Or not?
it's likely at some point.
I'm not gonna-
It
I'm not
very
gonna-
well could change at some
I'm not
point.
gonna say this, you didn't.
Yeah.
I'm just trying to understand your thought process.
No,
Okay.
we follow the current standards
Okay.
is the best we can do.
Yep.
But unless I'm missing something, and it's entirely possible that I am, is that if I look at the outlet control structure here, outlet control structure 4, says the grade is at 111. So that means that water doesn't start flowing into that until it gets to elevation 111.
The water doesn't get into the grate, so it's one of those structures that has a top, but it has openings on the side, so it functions more like a weir like out in a reservoir or something like that. So as the water gets up to the, up the side to the point where the rectangular section is cut out of that structure, it starts pouring in. You're absolutely correct. The top of the structure is about equal. I think it's equal with the perimeter of that basin. So it would start spilling over the sides before it ever got in the top. So.
Okay, so do you know off the top of your head what the elevation of those inlet ports is? Are by any chance?
I didn't include it in with these figures. It's in the details sheet. Actually, I do have that with me. So the outlet control structure information is on drawing C606. There's a detail for the outlet control structure, and there's different elevations. Each system around the site has its own outlet control structure, and I think you said this is number 5, correct?
4. It's 4.
It's number 4. So the top of weir elevation is 109 for outlet control structure number 4.
Okay, thank you. And yeah, so it looks like if the water level in that basin got to be 111, that would be, it would start overtopping at that point.
Correct. So these are designed to not overtop.
Now, something that I often see, but I don't see here, is an emergency spillway. So why was that not put into the design here?
Yeah, I'd have to revisit what the emergency spillway is. It very well could be the grate is low enough or lower than the perimeter. I'll have to revisit where the emergency spillway is.
Okay. So then the flow goes into the outlet control structure and then goes into this detention structure. And then what happens at that point? Again, there's no infiltration, right?
Correct. So
because it's detention, but it must fill up, and then at some point it drains out of it.
correct. So that the outlet pipe out of that structure is at the bottom of that structure, so it'll completely drain after the storm has subsided. But it also has outlet controls to control how quickly it will drain off-site to maintain our flows up, peak flows off-site.
And maybe you answered this question already, so if you did, I apologize for asking it again. Sure. So at what size storm does there begin to be flow into the outlet control structure, and from there into the detention?
It doesn't in the 2-year. I believe it's the 10-year. It starts to see some flow into there. It might even be higher than it might be higher than the 10-year even, but I think it starts to receive some flow in the 10-year storm event.
So assuming that's the case, so any starting at the 10-year, from there up, say up to the 100-year storm, that there's inflow into this detention structure, and then there's outflow as well.
Dave, which structure is that? The blue one?
The rectangular
structure,
yep.
So then what happens after, and then there's another outlet control structure, isn't there? This one right here, is that an outlet control?
Correct. I think that would be number 5. Yes, outlet control number 5.
Yep.
That's, just on the north side of the structure. So the outlet from this system goes in between the bioretention system and the yellow compensatory flood system. It joins up with the piping from the under drains, from the biofiltration system, and then all flow is conveyed around the compensatory flood storage and discharges. You see the blue arrow pointing up on the screen. It discharges out that existing pipe that discharges off-site today.
So that's the existing.
Correct.
6-inch. But so at what point does the compensatory flood storage flow into the compensatory flood storage area?
So the compensatory flood storage is only to essentially replicate what happens to the existing stormwater basin since it was delineated as being within the 100-year flood or the 1% annual chance flood limit. That means that as the as the, oops, sorry, I forget the name of the river there, as that gets up to its flood stage, water actually comes backwards through the pipe that's the existing outlet pipe for that stormwater basin. So it actually comes backwards through that pipe, fills up that basin. The berm around that existing stormwater basin is slightly below the 100-year flood elevation. So at the very peak, it'll also get a little overtopping into the basin there, and then as the floodwaters recede, it'll then drain back out of the stormwater basin. So we're required to not fill in any flood storage on the site. So we've mimicked that with that pipe provides that means for as floodwaters rise, it'll back up into and fill up this basin, and then drain back out. And this is not. Whereas the existing condition, it functions as it collects stormwater from on-site and can get flooded from flood storage. That's typically not how you would design it. You keep your flood storage separate from your on-site storage. So that's why we have all the other separate on-site drainage systems, and then the separate compensatory flood storage. So we actually have essentially like duplicate volumes compared to the existing conditions. But that flood storage that compensatory flood area is only to allow the floodwaters to come onto site to the extent that they currently do today.
Okay, I got you. So then I see a backflow preventer and a gate valve. What is the function of those two devices?
Correct. So that's part of so the piping between the biofiltration system and that other rectangular shape, the blue shape, the other detention system. That piping is the last leg of piping between runoff from the site, discharging off site. And part of the Chelmsford stormwater requirements are being able to isolate in case there happened to be a leak. That allows the ability to close that valve. So the valve is the ability to go out and close the valve in case there were a leak on site. And there's opportunity to do that for a leak because you have expansive of volume and time that would be required to infiltrate through the filter media and leave the site. And you have the hydrodynamic separators, which also capture oils and grease and so forth. So you have a few levels of measures before that water isn't immediately discharging out that pipe and off site. So you have time to close a valve when a leak's known.
So the backflow preventer and the gate valve.
So the backflow preventer would have a different function. That's for when the floodwaters come up. That'll contain the floodwaters in the compensatory flood storage and not backfeed into the on-site drainage system. That's a valve that closes, that doesn't let the water flow back into the system.
Okay, so it sounds like maybe the gate valve and the backflow preventer are doing two opposite
Correct.
things. So,
Correct.
So the backflow, if you look at my pointer, so the backflow preventer is stopping flow in this direction, correct?
Correct.
And the gate valve is preventing it in the opposite direction.
Correct.
Okay.
Where's your pointer, David?
Right in the middle.
What color is it?
It's white.
Oh, great.
This is a fairly complicated system.
Correct.
What do you have for a maintenance program for this? And something, if you guys are gone in 5 years, who's gonna I'd like something to be in perpetuity, to know what's going on here by an engineering firm or somebody of that caliber. Is the average.
Included in.
Mark's right, but I think the second question with his, not only who is maintaining the system, which should be in the O&M plan, but who manages it? Is there going to be one employee on site that's trained in this and it's his job to close the valve when something happens? Or is it done by committee? I don't know.
So to the first question, included with the stormwater management report that was submitted with the application is a attachment. Appendix E is the long-term pollution prevention, stormwater management operation and maintenance plan, so which does lay out the procedures for maintaining the system long-term. So that's been included in with the in with the package, and part of which has a section that needs to be signed by the property owner, committing the property owner to the responsibilities. So,
But there's gonna have to be a number of on-site employees who have trained in emergency procedures, right?
so there would typically, I believe there would typically be a SWIP for this type of facility.
Is one company gonna manage this facility, even though there are many different companies that operate out of it?
I think the order of conditions, which includes that, is recorded on the deed, which then is, part of the property deed. So that carries through to whatever property owner is in the future there. So that operations and maintenance.
Goes to the property owner rather than the individual occupants.
Correct. But it's deeded, the order of conditions is a deeded portion. I think that's the sticking point here.
I didn't mean to preempt you, Mark.
No, that's fine. I don't feel, warm and fuzzy about the whole thing, but, being that, who knows?
Is this the biggest system you guys have ever designed, or is this typical of what you designed?
I don't think it's the biggest we've ever designed. No.
Okay, so you've done systems like this?
Definitely.
More than once?
These are actually, the old conventional stormwater systems are no more. This is what essentially every site is required to design to these days.
Is this system a typical system, an average system now?
The scale is proportional with the site, so most small sites will have these same parts and pieces at smaller scales, and they're generally scaled up for the larger. But this is not this is a very typical common stormwater management system. Everyone is unique to the shape and the elevations of a property, but it's just tailored to the site at that point.
So, so if we could sort of continue moving in, what you call it counterclockwise direction. So the next thing I'd just like to ask about here is that we have this other existing outfall right here that says is being retained, again, for compensatory flood storage. So is that operating the same way as the other one you described, where that's for the purposes of inflow?
Correct. That is a small piece of the existing stormwater basin that is able to be maintained, and it helps with the overall compensatory flood storage. Helps to make sure that the flood volumes are maintained at every elevation per requirement for compensatory flood storage.
But as during the course of the storm, as the water level is rising, so there's flow into that pipe.
Correct.
And then after the storm, it flows back out.
Correct. Yes.
So I know it seems simple, but I just wanted to confirm that. So this will move. So let's if there are no other questions on that, let's move over to the other side of the building and this infiltration system, which I know that there's a lot of concern about that because it's only 40 feet away from the Zone 1, which you did put on the plan.
Yeah, we wanted to see that on the plan. I know that came up last time.
But not on this sheet.
Yeah, so if you
Top of your head, which sheet it's on.
So as you're looking at the figures, I believe it's the next one figure over. Correct, but one more figure.
Right at the edge of the driveway, Dave.
Yeah, so you start to see it with the rounded blue shape there. So
Okay, but this one doesn't show the infiltrator. Do
the
we have a sheet that
infiltrator's
shows
right in the middle of that parking area on the.
You have to go to the right.
Okay, but we don't have a sheet that shows both, I guess.
If I could talk to that for a minute, then you can see the same shape. The same shape shows on all sheets. It's not necessarily called out as the well protection area, but you can see what the shape is.
Okay.
So it's right in that middle of that parking is where the proposed infiltration system is.
Zoom out just a little bit. It's difficult working with the lag. Okay, so this is the zone 1 right here, which, yeah, corresponds with the edge of pavement, which we
Correct.
saw.
So the red line there is the existing edge of pavement. The existing parking lot pavement was built right up to that zone 1 wellhead protection area, the 400-foot radius. So you can see that the proposed pavement is the gray shade. So we've pulled back the proposed pavement farther away from that wellhead protection area. We're not building any proposed impervious within that. We're actually removing existing impervious to be farther away from that wellhead protection area. So that shape is visible on all sheets due to the existing curb line that's shown on all sheets. And even if you pan down a little more, there's some easement line farther down on the sheet that kind of helps your eye see what that circular zone 1 area is. So if you want to go back to the sheet that has the infiltration basin.
Easier if I do it this way. Yeah. So this is the zone 1 right here.
Correct.
And so I think the closest point of approach of the basin is 40 feet.
In that range, correct.
Yeah, probably this corner right here. So something that we haven't talked about yet, but we should talk about is, discharge to stormwater discharges to critical areas. So zone 1 is a critical area, zone 2 is a critical area. The entire site is in the zone 2. So there are certain requirements, there's certain performance standards for stormwater discharges to critical areas. And in particular, I believe that for infiltration systems, that there's a requirement to remove 44% of total suspended solids. So I assume that this system has been designed to that standard at least?
Correct. There's pre-treatment, again, it's the catch basins with the hooded sump, deep sump catch basins with the hooded outlets, and the hydrodynamic separators achieve the 44% pre-treatment that's required prior to infiltration in the zone 2. Zone 2, and there's no boundary that can be shown on the site because the zone 2 encompasses the entire site. It actually goes a couple miles north and south. It covers an expansive area, so it's not specific to this site by any means. But correct, we've designed the system to meet the standards to allow for the infiltration.
So something else we need to talk about is the water district and their concern. So I gather that they're not happy that there's any kind of infiltration at all this close to the zone 1, and they'd actually like a closed system again. Is that your understanding? I have their most recent letter here.
Correct. So we're in the process of addressing this comment. We designed the system to be outside the well protection zone 1 well protection area that's what it's designed for. It's the well protection to keep these systems out of that. We kept it 40 feet away. They still have concerns. We understand the concerns. So we are in the process of reworking the stormwater management system to appease their concern. So what it's looking like is we'll be able to take the infiltration, we need infiltration for meeting other requirements, other stormwater standards. So just closing the bottom of that system, we wouldn't achieve some of the other stormwater requirements. So we need to adjust that system. I think we're looking at taking the pavement that drains that system and piping that farther away from that wellhead protection area, likely in the front of the building, the south side of the site, but maintaining the roof, the cleaner runoff from the roof as discharging in that similar area. We'll likely be able to shrink that footprint and pull it a bit farther away from that wellhead protection area as well in doing so.
David, to that point, what if the applicant and the Chelmsford Water District cannot come to an agreement as to a solution? Who does Chelmsford Water District look to? Because they don't have a public hearing. Do they look to us? Do they look to planning board?
Well, they're probably looking to anybody and everybody.
But I mean, legally, so they just have to make their case to us. They can't enforce their disagreement with the applicant the way we could. Is that correct?
Well, but maybe, but see, the commission only has limited authority in this
Right.
case as well, because it's outside the commission's jurisdiction.
Right.
It's outside the buffer zone that, if push came to shove, that, the Conservation Commission can't really force a redesign of the system in this area.
In planning?
I think planning would have more authority, but actually, the agency that has the most authority is the permit granting authority under the local stormwater bylaw, which is the DPW. So it's really because the DPW is the one that grants a land disturbance.
There are two groups in Chelmsford that are hearing this that I don't think have statutory authority. The Water District.
Right.
And the Stormwater Management Group at DPW.
Oh, but they do have statutory authority.
David, if I can, the Water Department's been heavily involved through the planning board process to date.
I understand, and I think you guys are making great, but I'm just saying, if it came to loggerheads, how would the resolution be resolved? That's
Well,
all.
I think that's exactly it. So as part of the planning board process, we've received, I think this is the second letter. The first one, we actually addressed all their comments. The second letter came out when we had revised the design a little bit and moved the infiltration system. So there's a couple comments that are a little bit outstanding here that we're dealing with. I think if there's any concerns that they have, it's up to the planning board to put conditions on things and stipulate that as part of their approval process. Same thing goes with, fire and EMS, the sewer department, the
Right.
DPW, that's all part of the
I would
planning
look,
board
that one
process.
I would look to planning board, right.
Yep. And I wouldn't say these are arguments, these are just issues that we're kind of crossing the T's
Well,
and dotting the I's, and I think
The
they're gonna be
difference of opinion may be a cost factor to you guys, and that's where you would not come to agreement.
I think in this case,
No, I'm not talking about specific. Generally speaking,
It
where
always
you
comes
would
down to cost.
disagree
Sure.
is more because of a cost factor.
I don't think that's the case in this case.
No.
I think the
Okay.
idea here is, we want to maintain protection of the well protection zone. That zone is delineated for a reason, to stay out of that zone because of infiltration reasons and contamination reasons. We're out of that zone. We've already met that. But to further that and further appease their concerns, we're talking about just putting the clean water from the roof in that infiltration system, removing the pavement-related drainage and putting that farther away from it. I think that will appease their concerns, but, we have to hear that out through their process as well and, get to that common ground.
And I know it's getting late, but if I could just make another comment here, I'll keep it brief. I think this is a perfect example why the Conservation Commission should also be the permit granting authority under the local stormwater bylaw. In my opinion, it makes absolutely no sense for one agency, one board's jurisdiction to extend 100 feet and then completely end, only to have another agency take over jurisdiction. So just wanted to get.
And that's exactly why we're making sure the peer reviews are consistent and that you guys are happy with the peer reviews that the planning board has done versus what, you guys need as well, so.
So, I don't.
So David, this has been good, and obviously we kind of anticipated stormwater, that it would be, a tough topic to spend lots of time on, for non-engineers certainly, but do we have maybe 5 or 10 more minutes we can spend on this topic, or how are we looking?
Yeah, I think we started at 8:45.
We did, according to my notes,
So
yeah.
if devoting an hour, that would be take it to 9:45. So just one more thing on this particular matter, and we've alluded to it already, but I think takes on additional importance for this particular location, and that's the soil testing. So again, I know you've done preliminary for purposes of design, and you're gonna go out and do additional soil testing. And for reasons that I'm not sure we want to get into too much right now, although I think ultimately can. There seems to be an indication that there was maybe a lot of fill that was brought in this location years ago, maybe 40 years ago, in conjunction with earlier development of the site. Have you seen any evidence of, that there's fill in this location with the soil testing you've already done?
We have, I guess it's hard to tell, the soil material that's out there that we've test pitted is consistent with what the USGS maps show, the soil survey maps. There are some borings scattered around the site that we did for, general geotech recon for like foundation design purposes. And, there's some information there that we need to calculate to be able to figure out, what bearing capacity is there. So we do have, a general idea of information around. It's all kind of consistent with, the material that was in the test pits that we dug previously. It's just that seasonal high groundwater that's pushing our system farther out. We still need to do test pits in this area in particular, and that will govern what is possible there. For some reason, we dug up a bunch of fill and stuff that was very clay and not very permeable. That might dictate that size getting bigger, and our assumptions and our calcs will need to be adjusted or redesigned,
But I think when that additional testing is done and it is witnessed by, the town's representative, I think that's something that they're going to have to look at very closely.
Correct, yep.
I don't have anything else at the moment.
All right, good. Peter?
Yeah, I just have a simple question, and if it's not very simple, let's table your response. But I want to make sure I understand the system. When the biofiltration basin overtops, because the 10-year storm is bigger 10 years from now than it is on the historic data, and the water, when the whole system's overtopped, it just flows into the wetland, and then it all filters down through River Meadow Brook, wherever River Meadow Brook goes under 495, right? In other words, it's, I guess I'm really asking a hydrology question that may be beyond the scope of what you guys are doing, but I'm just thinking about the Zone 1 wellhead protection zone and thinking about where, okay, so if it's relatively clean water off the rooftop, and you can debate that, going into the rain garden, which is unlined, okay, that's one thing. And then all the stuff from trucks and parking and all that is what I'd be concerned about if I was in a water commissioner, which I'm not. But where does it go in a worst-case storm? Exactly. If I got this straight, it all goes.
Short is it goes exactly where it goes today, just at a lesser peak rate. At a lesser peak rate than what the site did previously. So we're not only meeting mass stormwater standards, we're doing a little better.
Right.
And the the contaminants on the pavement are, that's why we size water quality for a 1-year storm event. The contaminants on the pavement are typically washed away in the beginning in that first 1 inch of the storm. So you get the larger storm events that if there were a failure and an overtop, that those were already collected in the catch basin, the sumps, in the hydrodynamic separators, in the filter media, in the basins, and it's generally pure rainwater flowing through your pipes off-site after that first inch of storm.
Yeah, there's 1,000 questions that we probably don't want to take time right now. So.
Well, but I do think in a future session of the hearing, we need to talk about precisely how this is an improvement over the existing stormwater management on site, and talk about land use with higher potential pollutant loads, which I gather there aren't any proposed right now, but I gather in some ways the system's been designed to accommodate that, but we need to talk about that in more detail.
Yeah, and I was just thinking of leaks from trucks.
Mm-hmm. And there are other concerns that I think that I'll mention at the appropriate time.
What basin is this, in the Merrimack River or Concord River Basin?
Merrimack.
And water flow is, underground water is flowing to the wells or away from the wells?
To the wells.
Well, I don't think we know.
Flows away from the wells.
We'd have to do a hydrogeological study.
Yeah,
of
I'm
the flow.
just asking a question in case something spills it.
I mean, my sense is that, again, I'm not a hydrologist, but close. My sense is that would end up in the wetland.
Yeah,
And then the
that's
question is, how quick does it drain down River Meadow Brook through the culvert under 495?
But I'm more concerned with underground water as opposed to surface water.
Yeah, the aquifer flow.
The zone 2, that's the wellhead aquifer area, that's the wellhead protection zone. So yeah, anything that infiltrates into the groundwater, you're in the zone 2
Okay.
wellhead protection area. So that's why the pre-treatment is a requirement in the zone 2.
Well, just let me sum up a little bit. So, I mean, I think, it was a good discussion, technical discussion, obviously. I mean, what I heard was that, we're designing to improve the situation out there. So it's designed to improve the situation. We're concerned, obviously, water quality, drinking water. I mean, at the end of the day, we want to make sure that nothing goes in that's going to make things like, bad for all of those of us that drink the water. So we're focusing on that. We got some more, I'm hearing we got some more test pits going in. They're going to be witnessed by our town staff. So we got that happening. That's going to give us more information.
Do we know when that
Well,
estimate?
that's not going to be for a while yet, because when is seasonal high groundwater testing typically done? That's like April.
Yeah,
Right.
and correct me if I'm wrong, I think we won't, well, it's not about seasonal high groundwater testing, we can do that any time of year, it's the modeling in the soil there. I think we want to get through the next planning board hearing, present our revised design, make sure that the stormwater is peer reviewed, and once that conceptually is kind of, we've got the good feeling that it's okay, then we're going to go confirm our calcs with those test bits with the city reviewing it at that time.
But if you don't do the seasonal high groundwater testing at the actual seasonal time of seasonal high groundwater, then you have to do some kind of extrapolation, right?
No, the seasonal high groundwater is purely based on soil modeling, that rust color and the oxidation in the soil later, and that's what's used for determining seasonal high groundwater. That's consistent with Title V and stormwater design.
Okay.
And you use the soil textures for the infiltration rates.
Well, we have to work out that scheduling, because my recommendation is that the commission hire a third-party peer reviewer to witness that rather than the town. I think that
The town engineer wouldn't be adequate for that?
For a number of reasons, I would not recommend that. I can go and I can talk about that, in private if you want, but in my opinion, I think the commission should hire its own peer reviewer at the applicant's
I would
expense.
recommend that be a soil scientist who's a licensed soil surveyor in Mass, consistent with the people we put out there.
And I'm thinking maybe even, a groundwater hydrogeologist, or that's redundant, a hydrogeologist. I can think of, a couple people who are qualified to do that, a couple of companies. So that's what I'd like to look into.
All right, well, I think the information was good. I think we learned more in the
I
session
don't know,
today.
Mr. Chairman, if there are any questions from the audience, if you want to take those.
Yeah, let's, we had a good technical discussion, but we've got, we've gone about an hour on this topic, but if we've got a few questions from the audience that kind of focused on this issue or topic, yeah, let's come forward. We've got the applicant
David, also,
here.
you mentioned you had some other concerns. If you could forward all those to us so we could start to address
Well,
those.
I thought we could put those off to another session of the hearing. I mean, there was an email that I sent, I'm not sure if you were copied or not, a list of, concerns that we need to talk about.
So just due to time.
Stormwater management is only one of them.
Yeah, okay. All right. Thank
All
you.
right, but let's, Mr. and Mrs. Luna, come forward, please.
Thank you. 10 Carter Drive. We only have 2 letters for you tonight. The last time we had 5 letters and a commissioner resigned, so we're trying to.
I wasn't sure if there was a coincidence about that, but, at the end of that meeting, we had one resignation, and
I don't know.
we've got a new member here. He's looking solid still, right? So I think we're.
6 more meetings and.
Yeah, I'm not going to run away yet.
That's good, yeah, that's good.
Anyway,
I can say personally, and I know that my fellow commissioners, we all we read these letters, and
very much.
we appreciate the obvious work that went into preparing this, and obviously we'll make sure we make sure the applicant gets copies so they can go through everything that's raised
Yeah,
here.
we gave last time David electronic copies, and we'll give him electronic copies again.
Good.
So,
good.
which are actually better than the paper copies, so our printer started to go at the end. so-
Yeah, no wonder.
But two basic areas. One is to address the stormwater, and then the other is about the previous thing about the swamp. So about the stormwater, we reviewed the plans. We also reviewed the latest things that they put out. I was glad to hear some of the things from tonight. Glad to hear some of the things from David as well. But here are the points still that I think are a little bit outstanding. The first one is that with regards to the rain garden, we had the question of was it lined, was it not lined? And it's in the detail plan, in C606. It has a detail, it doesn't identify what the detail is, but it does have a label rain garden, it has the liner. And then afterwards looked a little more closely, it does have a little note saying, well, if it does have a liner, then it's this, and if it doesn't, then that. But nonetheless, it would nice to have consistent language throughout. And then also, this specific rain garden needs test pits as well, because it is infiltrating. And so that's the one thing we want to be sure to do.
You're talking about in the southeast?
I'm talking about the southeast, yeah, exactly. As far as regarding the rain garden, there is a planting plan and soil information that's needed for that. So we would ask that they submit that, which was not in the submission yet. Also, the detail shows a 24-inch, but it shows a point lower than 24 inches on that detail. So we would want the applicants to ensure there's at least a 24-inch soil depth as recommended. And then also, they're proposing a filter fabric, and cite you the source here. Stormwater Handbook, Volume 2, reports that filter fabric is prone to clogging, consequently do not use fabric filters. So we would ask that they reevaluate the use of a filter because of that. And then also, there's snow storage that comes up very close to the rain garden. And we would ask that there be means taken to prevent snow from being plowed into the rain garden. And then also that you add perhaps a pronounced berm just to prevent spillage over into it. But nonetheless, that's an area that we would want to have you focus on, that snow not be allowed to get into the rain garden. As far as O&M, I'm glad O&M came up. We looked through the O&M. It's ambiguously worded, the way that if you just read it straightforward, you would only be looking at them every 2 years. But there are things from the handbook that you should be doing monthly. And so we would want that to be looked at and improved. And also the subsurface, according to the Stormwater Handbook, subsurface infiltration systems don't have any mosquito controls which are prescribed. And so that would be one thing that we would ask, is to update the O&M, both for the rain garden bioretention area and the subsurface infiltration to correspond to the Stormwater Handbook. So those are things that we think still need to be done. As far as the subsurface infiltration systems, in the NOI, and the stormwater, actually it's in the stormwater report, the whole site is designated as a hydrologic soil group A. That's what they use for the recharge calculations and for the infiltration calculations, but the survey that they got indicates differently, which shows that there's the soils, at least on the east side, the west side, the soils on the west side are eudorthants. They're not hydric soil, A, but they're basically a type of soil in which there is no designation given, because it's an uncertain material. So one of the things that we would definitely ask, and this just really what this gets at to is the test pits. Again, is that you need the test pits. You don't need them just to establish the seasonal high groundwater, or that you do need to do that, but you also need to establish just what are the soils involved. I don't think it's realistic to assume that it's Group A throughout, and the NCRS doesn't even support that. If you follow the handbook's recommendation for test pits, it would be 3 for the western bed, 5 for the eastern bed. We actually, Ruth did a lot of this background research, so I get to be the face for it. She actually did most of the work. She spoke with Storm Trap about their systems, and we just wanted to make sure that the standard you're applying, the BMP that you're looking at, it's more like an underground infiltration basin than it is like individual trenches. And so for that reason, they would recommend, given the size, we're guessing it's going to be about, or we're approximating it to be about 3 for the western bed and 5 in the eastern bed. And also, we were going to ask, so we're glad to hear David ask for this, for a peer review by a recognized soils expert that is more than just a certified soils evaluator because of the history of the soils on this site. And by the way, the reference to clay came from, oh, that's in my notes over there. Yeah,
The clay references, we first saw it in the planning board minutes. Then additionally, in the MIPA filing, they explained to MIPA that there was a layer of clay found on the site so significant that basically it's what resulted in the project that had been permitted for 3 buildings, only becoming 1 building because they did not have the capability to do the leach fields they needed. We've looked at the plans. It's kind of hard to identify where that clay would have been. But there was a significant layer of clay that prevented them from being able to do a leach field.
Yep. Yep. So that's the history on the clay reference. Also, from Volume 3, Chapter 1, page 28, mounding analysis required when the vertical separation from the bottom of an exfiltration system to seasonal high groundwater is less than 4 feet, and the recharge system is proposed to attenuate the peak discharge from a 10 or higher 24-hour storm, which is this case. So in such cases, the mounding analysis must demonstrate that the required recharge volume is fully dewatered within 72 hours. So that's something that we would ask for, is a mounding analysis to be done because of the proximity to seasonal high groundwater. And also, it's important to, again, striving the importance of, in this case, not only separation from groundwater, but also for the amount of filtration that you want for cleansing. That the current, if you basically in groundwater mounding, you're going to be losing volume in your infiltration basin, which means that water then is not going to be held there, but it's going to basically increase the likelihood that you will increase your peak discharge rate. And right now, for the 100-year storm, you would only need to increase the peak discharge rate by 13% in order to exceed it. So we think that's another reason why you want to do the groundwater mounding analysis, is to ensure that you're not going to exceed your peak discharge rates.
If it's less than 4 feet.
Yes, yeah, if it's less than 4 feet. Thank you. Chelmsford Water District, you mentioned, I think that all the things that I think the applicant addressing the water district's concerns is a very good idea. I mean, historically, the water district has, if you will, negotiated with applicants on different, at least on my time on ZBA, that happened multiple times. Generally, they usually come to some sort of agreement. I really don't think there's much risk that there won't be something be able to be worked out with the water district, but nonetheless, we do want that to happen. And I know in the case of a couple of applications that we had, we received a letter from the water district essentially stating, all of our concerns have been met, so forth. And so I think that would be a nice thing for the commission to have as well, is just to get a confirmation letter from them that they're satisfied. But I think that's a doable do. Also, I had previously asked for a comprehensive narrative of the stormwater treatment chain. I think we got a good introduction today. But I think it would be very good to have a comprehensive narrative in the plan. The reason for that being is what somebody already pointed out. Some point later, 5, 10 years from now, if something goes wrong in the system, you're going to want to know how was it supposed to work. And if you don't have the narrative, it's difficult to work your way through it. So I would again request that. And then the last thing is that we just request that you get this information prior to issuing a decision. So I was glad to hear that you do want to wait to get the soils testing, because I think that is a very, very important piece. Because if they don't have the soils that they need, or if the soils recharge at a different rate, that changes a lot of the different computations that they have. So that's the extent of the stormwater. Now, when we presented a letter to you last time about the swamp being filled, we raised some questions about whether there was a hydraulic connection. We also suspected that there was a swamp there because of the markings in the plan, but we didn't know what those delineations were. Subsequently, we've done a lot of investigating into this, and there have been some new things that have come up. Well, I say they're new, they're actually all quite old. But one of the important things was that we saw in the minutes that there was a reference to developing Conservation Commission in, I think it was in 76, basically was requesting for 2 contour maps to be created and then to have wetlands designated on them. And so this was actually voted in town meeting. And the important thing of this is that these 2-foot contour maps were generated delineating wetlands, basing boundaries on, and this is a quote, "the state statute and legal definition as to what constitutes a wetland." And so these maps that were created, which were originally taken from aerial photographs, then created into topographs, and then they fielded, a company, I think it was IEP, went out and actually delineated wetlands and then put them on these maps. And so these maps, Ruth remembers seeing in Andy Sheehan's office, and then we were wondering where the maps were. No one really knew where they were. We didn't know where they were. We asked DPW, they didn't know where they were. And then, lo and behold, when we were in there with Tony, happened to look over and pull out a drawer, and there they were. So we actually have found the wetland maps from 1976, and I have a picture from, that's what figure 1 is a picture of this area.
Have you been able to share those with David here?
Yes.
Yes.
Good, good.
And I would highly recommend that, by the way, that everyone, if you can't get possession of them, go over to DPW, ask for the 1976 topos, because those are a great asset for this commission, I would think, to have. Basically, that's your last official, town-wide delineation of wetlands. And so I think it would be a great asset for you to use.
Well.
So in any case, why that's important is because this delineates the wetland. This provides an authoritative source that says that there was a wetland there in the late 70s, just prior to the early 80s. And then also, the map corresponds to existing conditions, contours, and wetland markings on plans submitted by Corcoran.
And then David has up there, if you look at the town GIS when you come, you can see that green spotted area underneath. That then corresponds more or less with this, the swamp area that's showing up.
And remarkably, it ends right at the edge of the building.
Yeah, it extends beyond it, yeah.
It extends basically all around the building.
Right.
So that building's footprint is 45,000 square feet.
And I have to confess, I didn't even notice it until the Lunas pointed it out to me. I didn't see the area with the green dots, and I've looked at the town GIS.
It's the same shape.
Yeah, I think it is. I think it is taken directly from these maps.
Yeah, and that's important because what that establishes is that and also there's a note in the plans that, the note that says, existing topography shown is a photographic enlargement of the town of Chelmsford, photogrammetry flown April 14, 1976, and prepared by Call East Incorporated, which were then the topos that they used to overlay these wetland maps on. That citation is in each of these plans, and the contours, the swamp markings all match this map. So the fact that the applicant drew, essentially these topos, these wetland markings from that map, I think is very clear, because it's citation to it. It also matches it exactly. So I think that the source of the wetland markings on these plans is from that map. The reason that's important is because they never delineated any wetlands like that. They had some swamp markings in the map that, in the plans that the commission reviewed for the NOI in 1982, which was the sort of initial, which kicked off this whole effort. That laid buildings over these swamp markings such that they're very, very hard to see. And so there was no delineation of the wetlands. Now, the commission was developing guidelines in this same time frame. They were working on updating their guidelines. They had a lot of details, information in their guidelines. They don't specifically mention delineating wetlands, but we do know that subsequent guidelines and then also the Wetlands Protection Act, basically says information needs to be provided. And the point of that being is that the onus was on the applicant to delineate these wetlands and identify them for the commission. And it does not appear that that was done. So that's the reason why we're sort of tying these things together. Now, there's a corroborative evidence, beyond the corroborative evidence that we provided before. DEP, when they were in, I think it was in 1990, they needed to install some monitoring wells. And so they were sending out maps to different people saying, you know, do you have a well on your site? And they sent a map to Corcoran, and they said, you know, here's a map on your site, and the map that they used to put that onto is essentially shows the wetland there. So DEP was using the same sort of wetland map in order to be able to use to identify for people where their wells were. So that gives it some corroboration that it had some authority. The town map from 1987, which shows this area, shows actually the effect of having, because it was in 1985 when it was, we don't know exactly when, but it was in 1985 from the aerials at least, you can see that's when it was cleared. And then a subsequent map done by Weston and Sampson for the sewer project, where they weren't focusing on wetlands, they were focusing on waterways. And then in that map, you can see that even with the grading now, there are 2 ponds there. So in some respects, there was almost like an altering of one wetland, and in the result, it created a couple of more resource areas. Then there's also the NOI and stormwater materials with the 1997 filing. That's where it made reference to, borings having indicated that soil is mostly a medium to fine sand. A portion of this area is underlain with a peat deposit. The satellite portion of the site is a Windsor loam sand. And so there's an indication of peat there again. That's apart from the minutes that we had cited before about a reference to peat. And then in addition, we actually went and talked to a local resident who lives there. And she described when she was a girl going down into this area with her friend, and they would pick blueberries there, where it's a large amount of mainly high bush blueberries there. And then also, as you went towards River Meadowbrook, there was an area with a mix of deciduous and evergreen trees. So that's, again, consistent with what the photographs show, and it's consistent with the fact that it was a, what did you want to say?
And yeah, she's picking blueberries in the summer, and she described the ground as being spongy and wet, and saying you have to be careful walking around because all these mounds of spiky grass, which we assume that would be similar to along the brook, where we know from our tracking there are several areas of tussock sedge. So those all would be consistent, but she was definitely calling. We didn't explain why we're asking. We just asked her to describe the area. And so it was she who then was telling us of this boggy, wet soil area where they would go pick the blueberries.
Yeah. And then we are now able to establish that there was a clear hydrological connection between this swamp area and the larger BVW. If you remember, there was a sort of an unimproved road that was running behind that property. It was a bit like we wanted to know, if you recall, well, I suggested that we thought there might be a hydrological connection. We thought there might be a culvert, but we didn't know, and we didn't. Then subsequently, we've now got 4 different independent confirmations that there was a culvert there. There are 2 different plan pages submitted by Corcoran in 1982 that clearly shows a pipe.
So Joe, just kind of interrupting for a moment. So assuming, this is all factual, which sounds pretty reliable to me, what are you asking the commission to do at this point? Are you asking us basically to deny the application because that at some point 40, 50 years ago, it looks like the wetland was filled in? Is that the request?
The request, well, first of all, let me state what I think the situation is, and then I'll base the request on that. The situation is, I believe, that there is an ongoing violation from the original time that it was cleared. That whatever approvals that were given by the commission were given without the knowledge of this wetland, and that for that reason, they don't address the existence of this swamp.
Joel,
And so-
excuse me, you
Yes.
just said whatever permits were issued
Yeah,
were done without the knowledge?
that, this area was a wetland.
So how, as opposed to
In other words, the
commission
commission
knew
never,
it existed, but the applicant chose to build it anyhow?
that
Big
the,
difference.
that the commission did not know that it was a
Commission
wetland.
did not know, the applicant
Okay.
did, the applicant proceeded to build the building.
Yes,
That's your contention?
that is our contention.
Okay.
We have-
Mr. Chairman, we've got two, our bylaws are in two pieces. One piece was written before April 27th, 2009, and then it was subsequently updated in, I'm sorry, it was written in, adopted in May 8th, 1995, and then it was amended and changed in April 27th, 2009. The one that was written in 1995 says, any person who this is section 18716, any person who purchases, inherits, or otherwise acquires real estate upon which work has been done in violation of the provisions of this chapter, which would mean the Chelmsford Wetland Bylaw, or in violation of any permit issued pursuant to this chapter, which would be a notice of intent, shall forthwith comply with any such order to restore such land to its condition prior to any violation, provided, however, that no action, civil or criminal, shall be brought against such person unless commenced with 3 years following the date of acquisition of the real estate. In April of 2009, it was amended slightly. It's ostensibly the same language. Any person who purchases, inherits, or otherwise acquires real estate upon which work has been done in violation of the provisions of this chapter, or in violation of any permit issued pursuant to this chapter, shall forthwith comply with any such order to restore such land to its condition prior to any violation, provided, however, that no action, civil or criminal, shall be brought against such person unless commenced within 3 years following the date of acquisition of the real estate by such person. Our bylaws are pretty specific. If the fact pattern is correct, then the bylaw applies. And I don't see why I think we should get an answer to that specific question first before we have anybody spend any additional money or work developing the site. I mean, why put the applicant on the town through?
I would agree with you. I mean, we have facts presented to us. We have some very hard work and research going back into records from the past 40, 50 years or more. You've got the bylaw. Let's get opinion from our town council on, his recommendation. I mean,
My
how we
request,
can
though.
proceed.
Now, Dave, with all due respect to our agent, David has suggested we could pursue these paths in parallel.
Well, I mean, I think we
Okay,
can,
then
but
we
I
could-
think I think we should be requesting the town council now. I don't think we want to wait any longer.
I wouldn't want to spend $30,000 on consultants between both parties, only to find out that this was appropriate.
Yeah, you asked me what my request was.
Yeah,
And
you were
our
building up
our
to that request,
Our
yes.
request, yeah. Our request is that you consult actually not town council, but a wetlands legal expert. That was someone that knows the environmental law.
Our town council would hire somebody.
There are a number of very qualified firms. Because of the nature of this in terms of questions of jurisdiction, questions of that sort of thing, I don't think there's any question that it was BVW. I think the questions revolve more around, things of jurisdiction and so forth and so on. So those are more legal questions. And so that's really was our request, is that you get that kind of
I thought you were
consultation.
building in there, that's where you're heading, so that's good. So that would be my suggestion, is like, obviously, we have a procedure as far as getting legal advice from town, from the town.
So we
You
have
know,
to
our-
go through the town manager.
Our agent is going to have to go to the town manager and put a request in, and then town manager will huddle up with town council, and, it's going to go from there. We can request it. This commission can request it, and it's got to go through the channels. and then the decision's made at that level. But, I mean, I think Dave's making a suggestion, and Dave, you could make a motion to that effect, and we can vote on it, and, we'll see what happens, I guess,
I guess the motion would be that we request the town manager to seek legal counsel as to whether there was a known violation on the site before permits were issued. I think that's what it is.
I mean, we need.
Reference the bylaw.
We need advice, basically, at this point in time, would we, as a commission, have the authority to basically,
Well, that's- you're
deny
right.
this project, or order a restoration and possibly a removal of a building that's been there for many, many years, based on this set of facts? I think it's something to that effect.
I just want to make a comment that the only reason that we bring this up is because of the anticipation that this building would be raised. In other words, we're not looking to go around town identifying places where there's wetlands to take buildings down. It's because this site is being torn down, and the Zone 1, that we felt like this was, we ourselves would feel an enforcement order would be appropriate, but we certainly understand that because we're not the ones bringing the suit, that you would want to be the ones, seeking what kind of counsel you need for that. That's really the extent of it.
Okay.
Chris, we ought to review the language of my request before we ask David to go to council.
Well, I mean, I think it's pretty
But
clear.
Vivian can type up the motion.
Yeah.
Because it's gonna go in the minutes, and you can review that.
Yeah.
Right now, you're authorizing the conservation agent to speak with the town manager to seek legal counsel to determine if there was a violation under chapter, what's the number?
Section 186-13D.
And if so, what are our legal options at this point, and what authority do we have to take action based upon the applications in front of us? The applicants, I mean, you guys want to say anything on this issue at all at this point? Any thoughts you want to share at this point? You can reserve, that for another time. I'm sure. Not at this point? Okay.
So the first question the town manager is going to ask me, is the commission willing to spend its own funds to pay for this legal opinion?
Well, I think we got to find out how much this legal opinion might cost. That might determine our budget. But I don't know. I think personally, I'd be willing to spend some money from our budget to get a ruling, advice,
It's the right thing to do.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, he raised a serious concern, objection.
Excuse me, Mr. Chair, why
Yes, sir.
should the Conservation Commission spend its money? It's a town issue. It's not a
Well, Dave,
There's a
you're,
legal fund, yeah. I mean, there's a town-
Dave, you're always got a good finance head on your head, so, I would agree with Dave, it should probably come from the, town legal fund first.
That's not right, that's not
Let
right.
me, if we go ahead with this will be probably the most significant issue I've been involved in the 33 years I've been on the Conservation Commission.
And to me, that justifies getting good, solid legal
If we're gonna do
advice.
it, we gotta do it right, and we gotta do it fairly.
Yeah, and again, we want to have a fair hearing to everybody concerned, so.
So if he asks me, should I say maybe?
Yeah, yeah. I mean,
And then we'll turn around and ask him, we need more money.
Yeah.
I wouldn't say maybe.
yeah, I would, I mean, personally, I would
Yeah.
think that we should get an answer to this question.
I would rather he say no.
Pardon me?
I would rather he say no.
Yeah, I mean, if he comes, if we get legal, again, legal advice can come back, but they can be, I think
One
it's.
step at a
important.
time.
One step at a time.
Move the question? Can I move the question? No, I can't.
Well, I think the
Because I
motion's
made a
been made.
He made a motion, I guess we need a second on Dave's
I can't
motion.
move it, right.
A second on Dave's motion, with somebody else? Is Billy on the second on Dave's motion? Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, and any opposed? None, unanimous. Okay, so we're going to do that, we're going to look into that issue. And again, we've been over an hour on a real technical discussion, a good discussion. And we got to come back. I mean, we know we have to come back, period, because, you guys are still in front of planning board. There's a lot going on in this. What are we looking at for, I suggest we continue it to our next meeting, the 24th.
I
All
move
right.
to continue the hearing on 201 River Neck Road until Tuesday, January 24th,
I second it.
2020.
Motion by Dave, second by Carl. All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Unanimous. Okay, thank you, everyone. We'll see you all. Appreciate everybody's time. A long night.
Let's hope 270 Bill Ricker Road's not here.
I know.
Thank you, guys.
Hey, thanks a lot.
I do think we have to put a time limit on every one of our hearings.
I think so.
No, for example, what was the other one that was, the Freeman Lake.
Lakes.
That went too long.
Well, that went an hour. We put it.
Went over,
We held it-
went over an hour, Dave.
Yeah, we kind of held it to an hour.
Yeah, I thought it was pretty
about an
close.
hour,
Yeah.
We held it. Oh, well, let's see. What do we got here? Where's my agenda? It's gotten buried here under
I
the
guess
paperwork.
270's not here, right? Right.
So,
So, yeah, the next one has requested a continuance to February 14th.
all right, do we have a motion then to continue to February 14th, Valentine's Day?
So do we think that they're gonna be here then, or?
No, they just.
Don't know for sure. They say they're making progress, so I think that's probably the best they thought they could do.
That was a
I make a
no-brainer
motion we
compared to the
continue
one
to
in
the
Riverton.
14th.
Motion by Carl to continue
Second.
to Valentine's Day, February 14th, seconded by Dave. All those in favor, aye. Any opposed? Unanimous. All right, so that's down. So that takes us through regulatory issues. We had a discussion item here for Block 337, Lot 3, Littleton Road, violations.
I saw him here. I saw Mr. St. John here earlier, so it looks like he couldn't wait.
I don't blame him.
I don't blame him. You know what, maybe we can get him on an earlier time slot next time.
Summary or?
Yeah, I can give an update. And I think I mentioned this at the last meeting. I did meet out on site with him.
Good.
Told him what needed to be done, that an RDA needed to be filed.
Yeah.
For the work he did. He definitely went, disturbed the 25-foot no disturb setback, went all the way up to the edge of the wetlands, pushed stuff up right up to the edge. So I told him first step was to get the wetlands delineated.
Yep.
Then file an RDA, which would be obviously after the fact.
Yep.
And I thought he said he was going to do that, but I don't think he's made any progress on hiring like a wetland consultant or anything.
Right.
So.
Well, let's put it on next agenda.
Okay, well, I hope we can get him back.
Well, we can work him in, we can work him in earlier.
Yeah, maybe right at the beginning.
Yeah, it's not gonna be a long discussion.
I guess I was remiss at that. I probably should have, given him a heads up.
Hey, we had a lot going on.
It did, but when it kind of developed, I probably should have called him back and said, hey, it looks like it's gonna be really late. Didn't think it'd be quite this late, but,
Yeah.
So I apologize.
Did he
for
give
that.
you any ideas what his intentions are?
He said he just wanted better access to get out there,
He wants to store trash there.
Well, I hope not. He said he does bird watching.
All right, there you go. Bird watching, yes. Yes.
I was hoping to learn some new swear words.
You know where we're talking about?
Is there an address?
It's across from Enterprise Bank on Littleton Road.
Okay, yeah, I looked at the other ones that are on the agenda, but not that one.
It's worth a drive-by.
Great, thank you.
Worth a drive-by. All right, so we'll continue that one next meeting.
With Dave's blessing.
With Dave's blessing.
With Dave's
Dave's blessing. All right, that takes us onwards to our favorite part of the meeting, for the new guy, our favorite part of the meeting, land management. Who would like to do, Carl, would you like to give us the land management update, or Dave?
Well, we can say that the CR is getting closer and closer and closer.
Good.
So we're making good progress
And our
there.
lawyer agrees with us, which is even better.
Yeah, we're
That's
just
good.
about ready to submit. We're just putting the package together and we will submit it to the state. I know I'm missing something there. on
No
this.
granite sign yet.
Yeah, we don't have a granite sign or etching, CPC etching. It's still being escalated. Paul is on it. You've seen the email.
I saw the email. He's, it sounds like he's firmly on it, so I'm expecting a positive resolution.
Yeah, we are looking at purchasing some native pollinator plant kits for the Warren Pole site from the Sudbury Valley Trust.
Oh, nice.
That would be used, they wouldn't be planted until the June timeframe. We have to figure out exactly where, but it was this was an email we got from them late in December, so it kind of sprung on us, but we're talking roughly in the $300 range for 72, I think it is, plants.
Okay.
So
If anyone's interested,
Plants, not seeds.
They're having a Zoom meeting next
plants.
Tuesday.
Is that next? Yeah. So
17th.
Yeah.
If anyone's interested, we got the phone number.
The other thing to mention is that we did do our site visit on Saturday.
Hey, it was good.
At Oak Hill and Deep Brook,
Yeah.
Bill Edge Deep Brook site, and we had good attendance. We weren't able to have everybody there, but it was good attendance, and we got some good actions. I will send out a summary of the things that we need to do at both of those sites. And
Yeah, we gotta get that
did
Oak
ask-
Hill kiosk fixed up.
Yeah,
That thing was
yeah, the kiosk and some
we gotta get it up to the level of standard like we've got down there, the Gibbs type kiosk. At
The
least,
trouble is Gibbs built the good one before we had this one built.
Yeah.
No, not
This
after.
one's not, it's in decent shape, it just needs the.
It also needs a coat of stain. That'll
it
help.
does,
whatever,
it does.
so-
It needs to go to stain.
Okay, that was,
I'd like to see us all eventually go to the ones we have at,
Warren Pole.
Warren Pole.
I think we should
Eventually, we
standardize.
gotta
that,
just.
that would be, yeah, that would
I
be.
think we
Places
should
to go.
standardize it.
Yeah,
Yeah,
Yeah.
and we have
it's sharp looking.
we have a good template for that.
It's expensive.
Yeah,
Yeah, but its longevity's there though.
I hope so.
We can do it, we can do it cheaper if we just follow the template and buy the raw materials, so, but
I would-
it's still, they're not cheap, but it's a really nice.
I know it's late, but I would say that the entrance to the trail at Oak Hill, where the solar farm is an eyesore.
Yeah.
Yep.
That's-
The town with the lease agreement never should have let them
Wilson.
just build it the way they did it. They should have spruced it up.
I just wonder if you could do some sort of visual barrier or something.
That's right, they
you
could have
know?
done something.
Some plantings of some sort, you're right, Dave.
It's too late now, probably, I guess,
I don't know.
Temporary
Carl?
fencing looks like heck.
but, you know,
So David's gonna also do an update on the Wilson Lane property.
So we've gotten the title report back. Actually, there were two title reports. There was on the subject property and then the property adjacent to it to see if the town might have a trail easement or an access easement to get to the subject property. So turns out that the town does not have such an easement.
Okay.
Well, not recorded anyway. But, I think it's still a good acquisition. It does abut existing conservation land with
you
access.
can't get to it from the end of Wilson Lane?
No,
Not legally.
yeah, not without permission of the intervening landowner.
Well, but that's who we're buying it from, isn't it?
No,
No.
no. it's a
Who owns the
different
little,
The daughter,
little
the
road
sister?
that goes down to the,
That's,
The pathway? That's not Wilson Lane,
the,
right?
the property owner is Wilson, I think.
Well, yeah, it's the Wilson
Wilson
Trust,
Trust.
and,
is it the house at the end of the street that owns that?
No.
It's one to the right?
right, yeah, right. So, but it's still possible to
Further
get,
back.
it's still possible to get to the subject property from Meadowbrook Road
Right.
through existing conservation land. I think
So that
it's
we'll have to
still
create that
a,
plan.
I think it's still a good acquisition.
That would be good,
Yeah, it's
okay.
contiguous, and the other thing is, the property that we would like to have the access across, it's worth investigating if we could buy either all of that lot or a portion of that lot to give us that access.
Yeah.
It's actually, interestingly, the valuation of that is a lot lower than the valuation of the property we're looking at buying. It's interesting.
Well, my
And it's
understanding,
bigger.
it has some kind of a restriction on it due to the fact that, I think some other property of the current owner, they wanted to develop it, and they got some sort of permit that required putting restrictions on this property. You know, I'll see if that.
All right, sounds promising then.
So, I wanted to have a request for approval for that so that I could go to the CPC committee, which is next week, and I would need to submit it by tomorrow in order to do town meeting in April, but I think we can still do this if we have a CPC meeting in February, because this was just kind of too late to pull this all together.
Okay.
But I wouldn't want to go to the CPC committee without this board's approval, but I think two things. One is, the lot, if we bought it using CPC money, we would have to have a conservation restriction. And David points out, and I think he's right on, that who's gonna wanna hold a restriction on 2 acres of land or
No,
whatever?
it's 1.34.
1.3 acres.
Yeah.
It's like, that would be a tough sell.
Yeah, that's the thing about CPC money.
It's
Yeah.
a tough sell. So
Yeah.
because the price is so low, anyway, I'm not ready to make a request tonight to approve it, other than I see nodding heads that it's a good idea, and we'll keep pursuing this.
Hey, we'll spend the 26 grand somewhere else.
But, if we can get the money from some other way, that solves the problem.
Okay.
But Paul's been kept in the loop, so he's well aware of what we're
Good.
doing, so.
We've traded emails, but we haven't discussed, so.
But if, say, after next meeting, we ask him to draft an article, I don't think that'll be a problem.
Okay.
I think he's more or less expecting it.
Okay.
And I know we had a February CPC meeting last year that we had town meeting things we voted on, so we still have a little time.
Good. All right, good. All right, so anything else under land management?
Was there anything else?
We got,
I don't think there's.
we got some minutes to vote on. We've got our November 22nd and December 13th minutes.
I just want to say one thing under agent's report.
Yes, sir.
So regarding another violation at 201 Boston Road, still have not heard anything from the owner of Chelmsford Lumber. He said he was going to file an RDA again after the fact. Last time I spoke to him, he told me he was going to check with his consultant. I was intending to touch base with him yesterday and today, just was too busy, didn't have a chance to. So that's still on the radar screen.
All right.
I mean, I'll tell him when I speak to him next time, the commission is starting to lose patience.
Yep.
Yes, that's
All right, you
exactly
can
right.
tell him if he doesn't file, you won't buy any more of your stuff from him.
What's that?
I'm all done.
That's why I said that.
I'm sorry.
Saying Mark won't buy
Mark won't buy any more stuff from him.
This is why it got to where it is now.
Consequences.
Because he ignored me originally.
Well, it seemed like he was cooperating, but
Yeah.
he's just not being
That's a great
communicative.
story.
Yeah.
Maybe, give
Doesn't
me,
want to listen.
No, that's too bad.
maybe put in writing, if you haven't already. You know, we'll summon them in.
Well, I mean, I don't
I
think he
move
wants
the
an
minutes
enforcement.
of,
November 22nd and December 13th.
Second.
Moved by Dave on the minutes, seconded by Bill. All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed?
Chris,
One
Yes, sir.
abstain, right?
I did the Mullen form for Riverneck Road,
Good.
because I missed the meeting
Yep.
December 13th.
December 13th, yep.
So I
good.
just want to let you know that that's.
Excellent.
And I
you can only miss
brought
one,
the
right?
paperwork to the
Yeah.
town clerk.
Oh, good. Yeah, you can only miss one
Dave,
meeting.
Thanks,
Dave
man.
sent me the paperwork.
Have I missed just one? Or should
You
I
haven't
do
missed
the
any.
Mullen on that?
Well,
When did you swear in?
he missed the
Can
December 13th
you mull it on
meeting.
something that's before you?
Oh,
That's a
get
good
here?
question. I mean, can he mull in when he wasn't a member? Because he wasn't
good
officially a
question.
member December 13th. I haven't seen that question before.
But the rule is you can miss one hearing, and have I missed one?
Yeah, he did,
No.
December
You missed
13th.
only one.
Okay, so I can't miss any more, otherwise I can't.
Exactly.
But if you're allowed to miss one and not be a member, then you can do a Mullen certificate, but we have to verify.
We
that.
don't know for sure.
Yeah.
But
So
you may
not
have
for
to
sure,
watch
but
the
you
have
Yeah,
the
I'll
TV,
I'll ask her.
which is easy enough.
Yes,
More than
it
one.
is, it is.
Riverneck Road meeting.
All right.
December 13th.
No, it's the only one.
So, let's see, anything
we
else? We're
adjourn?
missing anything else? So we had to vote, Vivian, did we get a vote? Was it unanimous on that vote? I
There
recall.
was one abstention. I'm assuming you did both sets.
Yeah,
of
we had an
minutes at the same
extension on the
time?
new guy, yeah.
And
That's what I heard.
Did you do? did you
we
do
only
those?
did November 22nd.
Yeah,
We
that's
should also
right.
do December 13th.
Yeah, same thing. Motion by Dave on December 13th. It was seconded by Billy. And then we're all in favor, right? Unanimous with one abstention from the new guy. All right. Good.
Move adjourned.
Motion to adjourn.
Please.
Oh, and you did get my comment about the Middlesex Street thing with St. John's Church and
Yeah.
the Harvey property up above and the
Yeah, I
water all
thought Mr.
flowing
Harvey was
down.
gonna be here tonight with his
Where's
client,
Middle-
but.
It's flowing on to Middlesex Street through the parking lot?
I don't know how far, I don't know if
No,
it's going on the
it
street, but
can't
it's
be.
going, it sounds like it's going into the parking lot.
Well, remember, there's a big hill
Yeah.
at the back of Billy's property.
Right, I think that's where the water
And
is.
see, and all the vegetation got cleared off, and then you don't have a functioning.
Yeah, that's the
evidentiary
big
base.
hill at the end of
But he did put-
John's street, I think.
But he did put in drainage, right?
Well,
We'll have to see it.
Yeah.
Did we vote to adjourn?
Yeah,
We had motion by Dave to adjourn. Who seconded that?
everybody.
We got Mark on the second. All those in favor? Aye, unanimous. And thank you, ladies and gentlemen, and good night.